Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook. Marvel. The Alpha Level Regenerative Self-Healing Ability at the Beginning. Chapter 41. The self-healing mutants are indeed a group of mutants that are extremely difficult to kill, especially those beta level and gamma level ones. The delta level heat vision of one person can only match the self-healing speed of the beta level. After discovering this problem, Koyama Yuriko threw it to Maloof to contain it, and the other two alloy claw mutants were handed over to Konosova and Issa, and the other 7 were responsible for breaking their limbs and restraining them, and the final harvesting task was handed over to Musa, the youngest. The round shield directly cut off their heads, and then the hot eyes of the two focused on the forehead of the head at the same time. The concentrated fire of the two quickly penetrated the skull and evaporated the brains inside. When Wolverine Logan and Colossus Peter felt it, there were only 6 mutants left, 3 were restrained, and 3 were waiting to be decapitated. Stop. Logan's 2 pairs of adamantium alloy claws protruded from between his fingers, and Peter also turned into a full-body alloy form. Yu, who had been watching the show, stopped in front of Logan with a cigar in his mouth, and Dasha, Logan, who has lived for more than 100 years, would actually get so angry because of a few enemies he has never met. He waved his right hand, and the remaining 6 mutants, after being knocked out by Malov and the others, held their hands in the crook of their arms. Look, didn't I just stop? Looking at the weak chicken in front of him, Logan felt hostile for a moment. He wanted to control Yu in order to coerce him into a replacement, so he stabbed Yu's jaw with his right paw, but his thoughts were thoughts after all, and Yu was not the weak chicken he imagined. A powerful and heartwarming kick directly kicked Logan into the elevator, turned into a vibrating right fist and hammered on the temple of Colossus, knocking the unsuspecting Colossus staggering, and then a set of combined punches, Colossus was directly beaten to death by him, and his body returned to the appearance of an ordinary person. Thick, Lee Crab. This classic national quintessence is not sent from one population, but from Pierce, Ross, Stryker, Steve and other populations who are watching the surveillance. Several Hydras are lurking in the middle and high levels of S.H.I.E.L.D. They even copy the entire process of the battle and passed it on to their respective bases when they returned. After Yu caught such a good sandbag to vent, he felt a lot better. He recovered his power and picked up Peter, and threw it to Dasha behind him. In the next second, his body turned into gold again, and he went to the elevator and grabbed Logan's ankle, and began to smash around. Listening to Logan's screams, Charles was silent for a moment. Jin. Don't worry, Yu has a lot of people, the 2 of your family can't die. If you shoot my elder brother, Logan will have a big deal this time. Looking at the smiling Joaquin, Charles smiled knowingly. Tell me your conditions. Joaquin tilted his head and whispered a few words in Emma's ear, and then Emma and Charles negotiated with telepathy, and the final price was agreed upon. First of all, Logan and Colossus, this time, must have some blood. Secondly, Joaquin looked at Scott with a smile, feeling sad for this hematopoietic doll, who gave you a pair of big sparkling eyes. Those who don't smoke you will be sorry for your ability. Scott will then be sent to the secret base to sleep for 2 years. After 2 years, Joaquin will transform his body to ensure that he has the other 2 abilities. Charles agreed after thinking about it. Emma picked up the communicator. Maloof, bring them all here. After thinking for a long time, Steve still couldn't help asking, Jin, it's incredible that your elder brother can become Genjin. Joaquin smiled with emotion. It's just an ability, but this ability is really rare. When he first obtained this myriad transformation ability, Joaquin originally wanted to use it himself, but thinking about his body that absorbs all energy, and his flesh that can be steeled at any time, it would be useless if it was too much, so he injected it into Yu. His luck was very good, and he inherited a rare gamma level ability level. Soon Yu was playing with the round shield, entered the conference room carelessly, glanced at the bitter Carter, smiled mockingly, sat next to Joaquin, threw the round shield on the table, and put his arms around Joaquin's neck. Brother, my brother has been tortured all afternoon here, you have to decide for me. Come on. Joaquin elbowed him lightly, then waved the comatose Yuriko Koyama and the other 2 mutants with alloy claws, and they floated behind them, and the Scorching Sun warriors also teleported to stand behind him. Only Dasha was still working hard to pretend to be an ordinary person, twisting her slender wasp waist, and slowly came behind Joajin. Professor, don't forget our agreement. Charles nodded, explained to Scott with telepathy, and left with Eric and the 3 mutants who were unconscious on the ground. As for the unconscious Colossus and Logan, Eric waved his hand and threw them to the Sun Warriors. Carter looked at the row of young people with uncontrollable fire in her eyes. She got up straight away and closed the door of the conference room, locked it and looked at Emma. I think you know what I'm thinking now. Emma shrugged. Of course. She glanced at Scott, who was still in a daze, and the mobile blood bank leaned back and fell asleep on the back of the chair. Carter said directly, Steve and I need to be remodeled, talk about the conditions. Joaquin looked at Carter and Steve, who was stunned, and thought for a while, do you have an alpha level 10 gene pool in S.H.I.E.L.D.? Carter shook his head, thought for a long time before clapping his hands, maybe there is a corpse, you will be interested. Alien, no no no. Carter shook his head triumphantly, and opened his mouth with red lip gloss, Sebastian Shaw. Not interested in. Joaquin curled his lips. The X gene activity in the body of a corpse that has been dead for decades has long since disappeared. What do I want to do? Besides, if it is extracted and injected, it will be lowered by 1 level. For the sake of a weak skill, I will help you transform it. I am full. Carter was a little embarrassed. Isn't there some genes anyway? It's useless. Hua Jin took the cigar handed by Hua Yu and lit it. Gamma and Beta are actually just 1 level. The original alpha level 10 gene, after being extracted and re-injected, will be lowered by 1 level. His ability is to absorb various kinetic energy and other kinds of energy. Alpha level is okay. Shao is a good example. Speaking of this, he paused for a moment, but downgrading 1 level would be very useless. The ability to be awakened by artificial injection cannot be upgraded, which leads to a limited amount of energy that the awakened person who accepts his ability can carry. The soldiers behind me shoot a volley of heat sight for 5 seconds, and the opponent will definitely break their body. Why do you think I want to come? But what? Listening to the dragging sound that made him grind his teeth, Carter rolled his eyes. Say it. In the next 15 years, whoever troubles our ARC group and the 4Cs group, U-Shield must intervene. If we let us do it ourselves, I can't guarantee that the other party's family will see the sun the next day. Then Shao's corpse should be added to the head, blood flower grass, blue heart flower, etc. Need 4 parts, maybe some more will be added when making it. After all, Steve has already transformed it once, and if he transforms it again, his body will definitely have drug resistance, so the dosage must be more. Finally, he puffed out the smoke ring. The last request is very simple for you. Get Nick Fury, a black fool, out of the deputy director's position and let him start working again as a first-level agent. If he is not in the middle of this matter, I will help you transform it for free. Carter looked at Joaquin with some amusement. Are you a little narrow-minded? Steve, can I guarantee that he has 3 abilities, self-healing type and plus Cyclops or teleportation? Steve blinked his eyes. Are there many kinds of self-healing? Joaquin nodded. There are 3 types at present. The 2 effects I mentioned are better, and the other one is relatively rubbish. It belongs to the self-healing ability of the inhuman race. It needs a lot of nutrients in the body. If you don't pay attention and get injured more, you may die if you don't have enough nutrition. Carter stared at Joaquin with a smile until he stared a little hairy. Say. We need 2 kinds of self-healing, teleportation and Cyclops, and give me a vibrating gold shield. My grass. Not to mention Hua Jin, even Hua Yu, who is self-cultivated, can't stand it anymore. Why don't you go grab it? Carter ignored him. After all, Joaquin is the one who is in charge. In addition, you must have a weakened version of the gene. I will collect the raw materials. You can help me make a batch that is enough for 100 people. In exchange, I can provide you with 24-hour do not disturb service. Whether it is Hydra, the inside of S.H.I.E.L.D., or the military and those politicians, they will not appear in your troubles for 15 years. The prerequisite is that I must get this batch of serum. In addition, we will promote business exchanges between the higher-ups and Washa. You know that I can still speak up on the upper level. I guarantee that in the next 10 years, both parties can communicate and develop with each other, regardless of people's livelihood, industry or medical care. Quote. After the 2 brothers exchanged glances, they nodded at the same time. Yes. After the deal was finalized, the 2 brothers Wajin and Wyu swaggered out of the S.H.I.E.L.D. building with their subordinates and returned to their respective mansions and bases. Carter was also in his office and called a troubled Nick. Little Nick, from tomorrow onwards, you will no longer be the deputy director. Nick Fury's eyes lit up. Are you going to give me the director's seat? Steve, who was sitting in the corner of the office, couldn't help laughing, and forced it back. The corners of Carter's mouth twitched. I made a deal with the Fahrenheit brothers, and they will provide us with a batch of serum as a price. You, Nick Fury, will start as a first-level agent. Twitter. Nick's bitter expression made Carter smile. Don't worry, I won't let you go alone. Your good subordinate Coulson will be temporarily demoted from a 6th-level agent to a trainee agent, and he will still be under your command. In this way, you will still be a small leader after all. A dazed and helpless Nick left the office. After returning to his office, he looked at the layout of the room, sighed and began to pack his things. However, the message from Carter still warmed his heart. This is just a temporary child. You don't need to move the office, it's still your private office. Nick put away the communicator and rubbed his cheeks. We have to work hard. Nick Ferry. Yuriko Koyama. Yu was sitting on the sofa in the living room, and Ika, who was wearing a nightgown, was sitting beside him with her legs crossed. She folded her arms and looked at Yuriko Koyama in front of her for a while. I didn't expect that the first experimental product back then would be met by me after going around all the time. Drive Molly. Koyama Yuriko, who had recovered her original thinking, looked at Ika with incredible eyes. Didn't you die in the battle at 3 Mile Island? Is this what Stryker told you? Yika smiled. Where's your father? Did Stryker tell you where your father is? Koyama Yuriko nodded in pain. Father is dead, killed by Logan who escaped from the base. Hee, it's really Stryker's usual method. Yu sneered. I have a document video here, which may be able to solve your doubts. Talking about the remote control on the coffee table, he turned on the screen on the TV cabinet, and soon a video was played. In the video, Stryker in military uniform pointed a gun at the head of an Asian man in a white coat. I asked you to erase the memory of that fool, why didn't you do it? You also destroyed all the potions and formulas. Do you know how much the loss is? I don't want my daughter to be the next killing machine. The man in the white coat poked his head forward. Don't think I don't know what you're thinking. My daughter is better than that Logan in every way. You're just practicing with Logan now, the next one must be my daughter. Bang. Looking at the white coat lying limp on the ground in the screen, Yuriko Koyama could not hold back the tears, stretched out 10 sharp Edmund claws, her eyes were red. Ah. After waiting for a long time for Yuriko Koyama to vent enough, Yu stepped forward and put his right hand on her seemingly weak shoulder, and his slightly curved lips moved to her ear. Want to take revenge? Of course. Join us, take us to his secret base, find him and torture him crazily, making him regret everything Zhang Jin has done. Koyama Yuriko calmed down, turned her head to look at Yu's almost perfect cheeks. You and I are not enough. Of course not enough, so I found some helpers for you. Yu turned around and clapped his palms. Come out. Dasha, who had recovered her original appearance, came to the living room with 6 warriors waving her nimble tail. Your people have been transformed. I didn't expect there are so many powerful mutants in Washa. Haha, there are many things you don't know, little Dasha. Yu pointed to the 6 mutants collected from China. They and Dasha will help you complete this revenge. An alpha-level mutant, 6 self-healing super fighters who are infinitely close to alpha-level mutants after transformation. Hello Death Girl. Dasha stepped forward and shook hands with Yuriko Koyama. I hope this harvest will satisfy us. Of course. Koyama Yuriko's eyes flickered. After all, his son Jason is a great treasure. Let's go. Shoo. Looking at the empty living room, Ika got up and hugged Yu's waist from behind. Now you are satisfied. Take a look at the house. Tomorrow, I will ask old Tom to find someone to redecorate it. I just happened to take you to the base to strengthen it. The younger brother said that this time I got a few rare genes from Washa. Yu patted Ika's hand, and then the two went back to the bedroom upstairs. He has always cherished this girl adopted by his grandfather. Love and loyalty are Ika's perfect interpretation of him. In the research room of the secret base in Lake Akali, Stryker, who was crippled with 4 limbs, struggled as he watched a row of syringes in front of him. He had always hated mutants because of Jason's awakening accident, but now that he looked like a ghost, how could he seek revenge from those mutants in the future? Rose's mocking expression before being sent back was something he could not bear. The torture his wife suffered before her death, and the shock brought to him by the Fahrenheit brothers finally made him focus on the X-gene syringe extracted from Joaquin. Let's start. The assistant at the side nodded, picked up the self-healing gene injector in order, and stuck it into his neck. As the light red medicine was injected, Stryker's face began to twitch, and he sighed in his heart. He finally embarked on the road of mutation. The numbness at the stubble of his arms made him want to scream out, but he was held back by gritted teeth. After a long time, he tried to move his toes. The swollen feet had returned to their original state, and the stubble of his arms had grown flesh. Continue. The assistant picked up the second syringe, and was about to pierce Stryker's neck, but a small hand seized his wrist like iron pliers. Seeing the sudden appearance of Lily Koba, the assistant was puzzled for a while. What's wrong? Koyama Yuriko took the syringe from his hand with a smile, looked at the serial number on it, and then looked at the other syringes, all of which were put into a box, and threw the assistant away. Get out. Seeing Stryker's shit-eating expression, the assistant nodded and glanced at Stryker, as if he was walking outside the door. As soon as he opened the door, 2 scorching rays penetrated his chest. William Stryker. Yuriko, what do you want to do? HMPH, what are you doing? Koyama Yuriko sneered, held Stryker's neck, and walked to the cold room, pulled his hair to meet the retinal switch, and as the iron door opened, the air conditioning inside floated out. Koyama Yuriko grabbed Stryker's hair, and dragged him to a closed storage cabinet in the corner. Jason. It was Stryker's son who was frozen inside, with a pair of beautiful eyes of different colors, and wiped off the frost on the glass cabinet. Koyama Yuriko stuck Stryker's face on the cold glass. Look carefully, Stryker, this is your son. He's not my son, he killed my wife. Stryker looked into Jason's eyes, his heart twitched but his mouth was still firm. What I did was not wrong. You know Stryker. Koyama Yuriko looked at Jason in the freezer. Jason may be useless in your hands, but in the hands of others, you can't tell. You are afraid of Jason's ability, but someone likes it. Maybe I should thank you. As for you killing my father. She glanced at Stryker with a livid face. Actually, I was just a little sad at the beginning. After all, I was the father who raised me, and I hated you more. You used Jason's brain fluid to control me for so many years. Let's settle this account slowly. Ah, you fool. Yuriko Koyama grabbed Stryker's throat with her left hand and lifted him into the air. At the same time, the sharp claws on her right hand began to cut at his body. Curse, scold, over the years because of your manipulation, have I been scolded less? Today I want to see whether it is your recovery speed or my cutting speed. Dasha, who quickly dealt with the other guards, walked in with 6 scorching sun warriors, looked at the pile of shredded meat at the feet of Yuriko Koyama, and raised her eyebrows indifferently. What good things are there? No. 17, number 18, number 21, number 53, and no 112 in front of me. These are all alpha-level mutants who were killed. Most of them were captured by Stryker, who had just awakened and received the news. Dasha turned her head to the people around her. Pick it out and send it to the transformation room just now. Let those scientific researchers extract the gene at one time, whoever dares to make a small move, directly. Seeing her wiping her neck, several people nodded and rummaged inside. Soon, corpses frozen into popsicles were pushed out with iron beds. Dasha came to Koyama Yuriko, looked at Stryker, who was recovering more and more slowly, and curled her lips. It deserves it. By the way, this little guy isn't dead yet. He was just cut off by Stryker, and now he's a vegetable. Oh, Dasha looked at Jason in the freezer, and the corners of her mouth curled up. What a surprise. I think Sister Emma will like this ability very much. After speaking, he put his hand through the freezer, grabbed Jason's withered arm and lifted the big popsicle out of the freezer. He glanced at Stryker, who was as angry as he was, and said, after dealing with Stryker, you take these Sun Warriors back to Wyu's Manor. We don't want the researchers here. Jin negotiated terms with those behind them. As Stryker's head was completely evaporated by the laser sight, Koyama Yuriko withdrew Edmund's claws and clapped her hands. I see. After finishing speaking, he left the cold room. Stryker has really bought a lot of good things over the years, and he has to take them away as a certificate of honor. Now he is a wandering jackal dog. There are many enemies who want to kill him. It is not bad to have a force to protect himself. Connors, how long does it take for this corpse to be absorbed before it can be used? Outside a specially opened laboratory, Joaquin and Emma stood in front of a half-meter thick glass window, looking at the corpse in the nuclear reactor, frowning slightly. You must know that in order to provide energy for this corpse, I spent a lot of money to get a set of equipment and raw materials from Damao. Connors and the few professors around him were silent. After all, they proposed and implemented this idea. Now the whole base can be said to be shrouded in one truth, and if one is not operated properly, they will not leave a single hair. Boss, you have also seen that the X gene in this corpse is alive, and it has recovered from the original 0.7 to the current 61.9. It must be able to be extracted in another 2 months. Joaquin nodded. You'd better pay attention to my safety. This base is my painstaking effort. Your family members also live in the base. I don't need to say anything else, right? Yes, yes, yes. Connors nodded hastily, and suddenly his thigh was hugged. He looked down and saw that it was his little daughter, Nini. He quickly squatted down and hugged Nini. How can a child run around? It's so dangerous here. Several other professors looked at Connors, who was talking to the air with weird faces, grinned at the corners of their mouths, glanced at Emma secretly, and hurriedly shifted their eyes elsewhere. Joaquin snorted softly, and walked out of the laboratory with Emma in his arms. It's almost there. Boring. As the two walked away, Connors found that his little daughter was gone, replaced by teasing chuckles from his colleagues. He patted his forehead with a wry smile, and went to work on his own affairs. Boss, I have made a new discovery in the sequencing of gene chains. Joaquin, who was spending the spring festival with his parents in Washaw, received a call from Randolph by accident. Judging from his excited tone, it seemed that he had made a remarkable discovery. This made Joaquin interested. Tell me. According to the previous permutation table, and the permutation table we have re-established now, just put. Joaquin rolled his eyes. Don't talk to me about technical terms, talk about the result. We can inject more ability genes into Sun Warriors and turn them into Supermen in comics. Quote. Are you sure you're not kidding me? Randolph's tone on the phone was very firm. We cracked the X gene list. How many abilities can be added? Joaquin wasn't interested in those terms, so he directly asked the question he was most concerned about. Currently, our Scorching Sun Warriors have a total of 5 abilities. Now we only need to decipher the superficial gene chains of these warriors, and in theory, we can add 3 abilities to them. How long it takes? Randolph was stunned for a moment, and when he calmed down, he seemed to have thought of this question as well, a little embarrassed. I'm not sure yet. Your uncle. Joaquin's originally excited mood also cooled down. Randolph, your vodka ration for this month and next month is gone. Let me tell you, if you dare to drink it secretly, I will ask Victor to send you into the training barn. Do you believe it or not? Duo. Hearing the busy tone in the microphone, Randolph babbled, walked out of the research room with a syringe, found Milov, who was staying behind, and without saying a word, the large-sized needle precisely pierced his blood vessel. It won't be long before you can add new abilities again. Is it? Maloof opened his mouth wide with excitement. Ha ha ha, this is really good news, Professor Randolph. You've been drinking. Maloof nodded. It's boring. Randolph pulled out the needle angrily, and slapped Maloof. From now on, you Sun Warriors are not allowed to smoke or drink alcohol for 24 hours. We need your blood for in-depth research. Do you understand? All right. Malov shrugged, and threw the needle into the trash bin beside him. He planned to go to the training room to see if the 3 mutants had woken up, especially the young man who was also a Slav, who could turn his whole body into alloy at any time. He had been greedy for this ability for a long time, but his body would not allow it. Nick Fury's 3 views on life in the past 2 days have been shattered by the pretty girl around him. He swears that the pretty girl next to him is definitely not a mutant, and the energy attack he can launch is definitely stronger than Steve's Cyclops. He lied to me. Everything he said before was a lie. Nick Fury looked at Carol with a sad and irritable face, sighed and did not say much, and listened carefully to the conversation between the two. The almost begging words of the screws finally made Carol look sideways. We just want a home of our own. Clap, clap, clap. The sudden applause made several people on the lawn tense. When Nick followed the applause, he couldn't help rolling his big eyes. Oh, well. What? You have a problem with me. Nick. Joaquin stared at Braised Egg with a smile, and the latter shivered, grinning and shaking his head. No. Dasha and the Black Widows surrounded the two Skrulls. Konosova and Issa took out a needle and a large number of blood vessels from the waste bag on the back waist, shrugged and shook the needle in their hands. Mind if we draw some blood? Quote question mark question mark question mark quote. Several people looked at them in confusion. Nick came to Joaquin and glanced at him with strange eyes. You came here to draw blood. For new species that have never been seen before, we are used to testing them first. Joaquin brought Emma to Carol, and as Emma's eyes lighted up, he quickly collected the required information. I understand that her mind is very chaotic now. It seems to be a high-tech technology that hides her previous memories and instilled some other messy things in her, so she is in a bad mood now. Wardfa. Carol looked at Emma suspiciously. How can you know what I'm thinking? It's just a trifle. Emma smiled and turned to the Skrulls who were being blood drawn. How about we make a deal? You say. The Kree will find you at any time, and you won't leave a single one alive. Don't you deny that. The Skrulls were silent, but you can't be their opponents. After all, if you compare the two sides, your technology is too far behind. Emma shrugged and turned to look at Carol. Can I ask you a little favor? Carol pointed at himself, and Emma nodded. You have the ability to control a certain kind of energy, so I want to judge the degree of your control over energy. Can you use your ability on me? Ma'am, are you sure you're not joking with me? Of course. Seeing that Carol was still hesitant, Emma spread her hands. Okay. Issa. The scorching laser sight hit Emma's body. Under the stunned gaze of everyone, Emma, who was standing still, turned into dozens of phantoms. Her hands squeezed hard to the middle. After Issa stopped the laser sight, Emma had an energy ball shining with scarlet light in her hand. Feel it. As Emma spoke, she slapped the energy ball on Carol's chest, and after a muffled sound, Carol was no longer there. Nick and the black girl beside him opened their mouths and said, "Thick, little crab." The two Skrulls looked at Emma as if they had seen a ghost, and then looked at Issa beside them. Just as they were about to open their mouths to say something, Joaquin carried Carol back and teleported back. He twisted his shoulders to avoid Joaquin's hand, and came to a position 2 meters in front of Emma. Now I believe it. Drink. Bang. Emma turned into dozens of phantoms, constantly absorbing Carol's energy. Under Carol's hellish gaze, Emma absorbed faster and faster. Seeing this, Carol quickly cut off the energy output. What kind of ability do you have? It's a secret. After finishing speaking, Emma came to the Skrull man. Now besides choosing to trust us, do you have any other options? Talos. Okay. State your request. It's very simple. There are many technologies on the spaceship that the Earth does not have. We need to remove some communications and other small spaceships for research without affecting the spaceship's travel through space. As a price, we will explore the universe with you until we find a suitable planet for you. Really? Seeing his unbelievable expression, Emma didn't say anything, and turned back to Joaquin. Several other Black Widows also came behind the three of them. Joaquin glanced at Nick, who was still in a daze. We will come tomorrow morning. I hope you don't take them away first. Seeing the dissipated red smoke, Carol and the Skrulls exchanged glances, then returned to the house with Nick and the others, and began to discuss the next step. In the Weapons Research Center in the secret base, in an energy analysis room, a dozen people in white coats surrounded a jar containing colorful energy, writing and drawing on the folder with pens in their hands. The person in charge of energy research came to Joaquin's side. Boss, the energy inside matches 83% of the remaining energy in the energy storage device we seized from the Hydra base. Infinite Cube. Joaquin nodded and left the research center. After returning to the office, he poured himself a glass of tequila. Notice, all the heads of bases and branches, come to the headquarters of the art group for a meeting at 5 o'clock in the morning. Emma nodded and went to give instructions. Dasha came behind Joaquin and gently squeezed his shoulders. Are we really going to the universe? How? Joaquin reached out and patted her little hand, stroking the smooth scales on the back of her hand. Don't you want to go? No. Dasha shook her head. We don't know when we'll be back after we left. I'm a little worried about my sister and little nephew. Joaquin took a sip of his wine. Hee, what is there to worry about? Natasha has been injected with leech serum, and now she is an ordinary farmer's wife. Alec, you have seen him before. He is a brave and responsible man. He may be more worried about the safety of Natasha and their mother and child than you. Besides, we are just going to see it, and we don't have to live in the universe forever. You want to meet the beauties in the universe, right? Dasha, who had adjusted her emotions, patted Joaquin's shoulder angrily, but was pulled into his arms by Joaquin's backhand. Looking at Dasha, who had regained her original appearance, Joaquin lowered his head and kissed her purple lips. You know, you, me, Emma, the three of us are one. When Emma returned to the office, she glanced at the tired and crooked two people, sat down on the sofa, waved the wine bottle on the coffee table to float up, and was controlled by her to pour tequila, and sipped slowly. Our current strength seems to have reached the bottleneck. No, no, no. Joaquin patted Dasha's back lightly. Our strength is far from being fully developed. We are still alpha-level mutants. Strictly speaking, the three of us belong to the Omega Reserve. Only when we break through our current strength with a certain ability can we reach the Omega level. He pointed to himself. For example, in my magnetic field manipulation, the next stage is to randomly use the two-pole magnetic field, and the next stage after the two-pole magnetic field is the unified field. By then, I will have cosmic level strength, and in the state of the two-pole magnetic field, I have almost reached the level of the quasi-heavenly Father, or the entry level of the quasi-heavenly Father. After talking about himself, he pointed to Emma, who was thinking seriously. Your telepathy has been almost developed by Tianqi's serum. At this time, you can focus on energy absorption and self-strengthening, sand control and mind power. If you break through any of these three abilities, you will definitely reach the quasi-heavenly Father level. Dasha asked curiously, what about me? You. Joaquin's tone was a bit sour. As long as your bug's ability to transform everything from matter to energy level, I don't think the Heavenly Father level can measure your strength anymore. You must know that you who can transform into energy can create the matter you imagined at will, and you can also wipe out your enemies at will, not to mention you have other powerful skills. Looking at the excited Dasha in his arms, Joaquin didn't say anything to hurt her. This girl's awakening ability is certainly powerful, but she wants to break through the material and energy barriers. To be honest, Joaquin doesn't think she can easily reach that level. That kind of illusory ability really tests a person's luck, and such illusory things as luck are not something you just say you have. In the group meeting room in the early morning of the next day, Wajin and Wayu brothers sat side by side in the middle. Wajin first looked at Asazuo. You enjoy your life now, don't you? Asazuo nodded and said nothing. Joaquin thought for a while. The main base is usually guarded by you. If there is any situation, please contact my elder brother. Don't care about the chaos outside. As long as you don't endanger yourself, you will ignore everything. Then I looked at Jin Bing Wilson. I am still very satisfied with your ability to handle affairs, so you continue to stay in those spheres of influence, and pay attention to those newly awakened mutants by the way, and set your sights higher. Mutants below the beta level are not rare abilities. There is no need to disturb them. After all, Charles is still alive. Victor and Sarava are stationed at the base on Damao's side. Your task is not light. After all, there are 1 or 2 Hydra bases near Damao. You need to carefully screen out those people in the base and the important positions in the subordinate companies. I don't want to hear any bad news when I come back. Victor nodded in response, and the heads of the other 2 regions and the company were handed over to Wayu for supervision. In order to prevent any accidents, the number of Sun Warriors under Wayu has now reached 12, but many X-genes can't keep up, so they can only be added slowly in the future. The original agreement was for 1 year, and Joaquin was quite ruthless enough to transform them with a few Delta-level abilities, but he almost turned the 3 brothers into men. Even the good-tempered Charles couldn't help calling and complaining. You go to make a stop first. I'm tired of the Earth. Maybe it's not bad to be a businessman in the universe. Hua Jin and Hua Yu hugged and patted Hua Yu's back. Take care of your parents. In addition, a batch of alien technology will be sent to the base today. You will focus on the base in the future. I will. Then, watching Joajin and his group disappear with a big bag and a small bag on their backs, Hua Yu sighed and lit his cigar, then turned his head to look at Yuriko Koyama beside him. Do you think there are dinosaurs in the universe? The corner of Yuriko Koyama's mouth twitched. Are you moving or are you going to settle down? When Nick Fury opened his eyes in a daze, he happened to see more than a dozen people carrying large and small bags into the cabin. There were also a pile of large boxes stacked on the lawn. Nick rolled his eyes, picked up the boxes and walked into the cabin. Hearing the clanging sound inside, he knew what it was. Putting down the box and clapping his hands, he came to Joaquin's side. "Aren't you coming back?" Joaquin glanced at him angrily. "What are you thinking? I went on a space trip, why didn't I come back?" Nick rolled his eyes and went into the room to wash. After a long time, Carol brought Talos, Maria and another Skrull to the lawn. The Skrull who was in charge of refitting looked at the cabin that was packed to the brim. Kazilin's eyes were about to pop out. "So many things will be overweight." "Don't worry," Joaquin waved his hand. "I can easily send you to outer space. These are our daily necessities. It's the first time to travel far, so be prepared." Maria nodded. "There is no one who wants to travel to the universe." Talos and his family whispered a few words, and the latter nodded and changed into Carol's appearance. Joaquin was a little puzzled. "What is this for?" "We need her to transform and find the spaceship for us to delay time." Looking at the somewhat sad Talos, Joaquin smiled. "No need, when you find the spaceship, those Chris can also find the spaceship, there is no difference between the two." Nick looked at his watch. "How about we wait a little longer?" Joaquin glared at him. "Let's go." Okay. He boarded the modified Quinjet fighter, took out the communicator and sent a message to Carter, while Joaquin and his party wore special helmets, and the mechanical claws in their hands were fixed on the fuselage. As the aircraft engine started, Joaquin manipulated the magnetic field, making the fighter easily lift off and fly towards space. The Skrull man who was crowded in the back seat looked at Nick Fury curiously. "How can this aircraft take off under overload? It's not scientific." "Science," Nick couldn't help slandering in his heart. "Are you talking about science to mutants here?" However, he still explained, "This is the leader's unique ability. If he wants to, he can easily destroy the entire planet. Of course, the premise is that there are iron and magnetic elements on this planet." At this time, Emma's voice sounded in their minds. "Jin now is not just as simple as manipulating iron and magnetic elements. Nick, your information on Jin is from 12 years ago, right?" Talos looked at the silent Nick, grinning and revealing a row of big fangs. He liked to see this ugly, dark and slumped monster. Joaquin, who was standing at the waist of the Quinjet fighter, looked at the universe with his hands behind his back and looked at the universe with emotion. Compared to the vast and boundless universe, the Earth is too small. "I really don't know those great horrors. Why do you like to stare at the Earth, just because of those two infinite gems?" While Joaquin was complaining and admiring the stars shining in the dark, a spaceship bigger than an aircraft carrier was directly in front of them, slowly revealing its figure. "It's beautiful." Emma and Dasha, looking at the spaceship showing the whole picture, expressed emotion in their mouths, but what was revealed in their eyes was the desire to possess it for themselves. They really wanted to change the spaceship to their own names. "Gold, look." Dasha, who was following Talos, pointed quietly to the row of passages. Inside were rows of leather clothes, which were very similar to those on Talos. Joaquin nodded. "I'll get a few and send them to the base later." The group was taken to an empty room by Talos. Looking at the children's toys and an arcade machine that was still on, Joaquin grinned. It seems that he has found his own people. Carol and Nick looked at the steaming cup of coffee with some hesitation, until Talos let out a series of strange screams, and soon several automatic doors around him opened, and Skrulls in ragged clothes came out one by one. "It's touching." Dasha and Emma, who were cold-hearted and dark-hearted, looked at the family of three hugging each other, and said these three words emotionally. Nick grinned in disbelief, showing a row of big teeth. "Why do I feel so strange when I hear this sentence from your mouths?" "Go away." Dasha kicked Nick's ass. "Don't you see how pitiful those children are?" Nick wiped the footprints on his buttocks, and cursed inwardly. "Aren't you killing too few?" "Wow, there are guests here, and there are quite a few of them." Emma came to Joaquin's side. "I don't know if their weapons can do us much harm." "It's just an energy weapon, it's not like we can't absorb it." Joaquin smiled and shouted to Talos, "Your friends are here. They don't look very friendly. Let's start our deal with them." Meow. As the passage door was opened, a team of blue-skinned aliens walked in, led by a middle-aged man. "Have you become brothers and sisters with the enemy? Why don't you use your original uniform?" The middle-aged man threw the orange at Carol's feet, and the woman holding the gun behind him tilted her head. As we expected, she was brainwashed. Relying on the presence of Joaquin and the others, Nick Fury pretended to cough. You. Crack. The middle-aged man made a big gesture, and slapped Nick aside. An ordinary earthling, do you have a role to interrupt here? Okay. Joaquin looked at Nick, who was shaking his head, and asked curiously, didn't old Carter inject you with the genetic medicine? Fact. Nick rested his left hand on Maria's shoulder, and rubbed the slapped cheek with his right hand. Of course I got the injection. Are you people on Earth so rude? The middle-aged man came to Joaquin and looked up at the tall Joaquin. I don't know if it's rude to interrupt others. Or do you want to taste the feeling of our weapons hitting you? Joaquin smiled and glanced around at the blue pikery people surrounding him, opened his fingers and moved. Hee, it seems that your weapons have never been separated from the blessing of some necessary elements. As soon as his words fell, the energy gun in the hands of the Kree was snatched away by an invisible big hand, and the muzzle of the gun was aimed at them in reverse. The middle-aged man opened his mouth. Wardfa. Taros, our deal takes effect from now on. Joaquin waved his hand casually. Except for this person and that pretty girl, the others twisted their necks, and all the equipment on their bodies was taken off and packed. Yes, Milov, Konasova and the others began to faithfully carry out the orders given by Joaquin. The blue-skinned bearded man yelled in Kree, and the Krees fought with the Sun Warriors. Rather than saying that the two sides were fighting, it would be better to say that these Krees were being rubbed unilaterally. That pretty girl in Carrie, wrapped around her neck by Dasha's slender tail, let her legs flutter in midair, holding the energy rifle of pretty girl in both hands, aiming at Joaquin at the side. Try. View. The moment Joaquin nodded, Dasha pulled the trigger, and a ball of blue energy hit Joaquin's chest, but miraculously sank into his body, and there was not even a single scorched mark on his clothes. How do you feel? Dasha and Emma looked at Joaquin curiously, and the latter thought for a while. Compared with Malouf's laser sight, the power is several times weaker, but it is 7 or 8 times higher than the kinetic energy of bullets, and the destructive power is similar. Are you really Earthlings? The middle-aged man looked into their eyes, full of disbelief. How could there be such a powerful fighter like you on such a backward planet? This is unscientific. Science. Several people sneered and ignored him. Joaquin pointed to him and nodded to Carol. It's yours. Almost forgot. With one right hand, he unloaded some of the equipment on the man's arms, casually threw it to Malouf, who had completed the task, and waved to Talos. Tell us about this spaceship. Okay. As Joaquin and his party walked away, Carol came to the man. Walter, why did you lie to me? What's the use of talking about it now? Walter smiled strangely. You think you can kill me to be safe? What do you mean? Nick stepped forward to ask. Walter gave him a disdainful glance, and then looked at Carol. Now you have another chance. As long as you kill these people, when Ronan descends to Earth, I will take you back together and receive the teachings of the Supreme. This is your only chance. The accuser Ronan. Carol's face changed again and again, and then he touched Walter and found a palm-sized device. He turned to look at Nick and Maria, who were holding guns aside. Look at him. Different from the tense atmosphere at Carol's side, Joaquin and his team were commenting on a small aircraft, while Talos explained the parameters of this aircraft. The Spirobee fighter is also the smallest combat unit that is relatively popular in the universe. It is equipped with energy shields and Type 7 energy cannons. It is an indispensable part of a large mothership. Not state-of-the-art. Talos blinked his eyes. It was definitely the most advanced 20 years ago, but now, He made a long sound and shrugged his shoulders. Perhaps those pirates prefer this fighter. It is cheap and has good performance. It is estimated that it can fly in the universe for decades. What about that one? Emma pointed to the huge fighter next to the Quinjet fighter, and Talos expressed emotion. I don't know the model, but as Commander Carey's car, it must be the latest fighter. Emma nodded knowingly, and patted Minerva's shoulder with her right hand. Can you fly that fighter plane? Of course. This is a must-have skill for our elite fighters. It's done. Emma nodded with a smile, and the group began to count the various supplies in the spaceship. The siren sounded quickly and made them frown. When they came to the room just now, the first thing they saw was a group of colorful energy lights that blinded their eyes. The energy emitted made the three of Joaquin salivate, and the gleaming Carol looked at Joaquin. the Kree fleet is coming soon, and the leader is Ronan the Accuser, a notorious executioner in the universe. You broke through. Joaquin didn't care about Ronan, who was killed by the second fool, but was very interested in the energy she radiated. Can we absorb a little bit? Now is not the time to joke. Carol glared at him angrily, and then asked the Skrulls to drive this huge spaceship into the Earth's atmosphere invisibly, waiting quietly for the coming danger. Tisk tisk tisk, look at you now, your whole body is shining, all this energy has overflowed and dissipated, what a waste. Joaquin bumped her shoulder with a smile. A discussion. Say, I'll teach you how to fly with your ability, can you turn around and let us absorb energy a few times? Carol thought for a while. Okay. First of all, you have to calm down. Carol closed her eyes to feel the surging energy in her body, and waited for Joaquin's next instruction. She didn't hear the next sentence for a long time, which made her open her eyes in confusion. You. Joaquin looked at Carol, who was suspended in the air with a twitching face. My teaching has been completed, don't forget the agreement just now. They're here. Talos, who was sitting in the driver's seat, looked at the fluctuating values on the radar screen, and his heart was agitated. If he hadn't hoped that it could only be placed on these humans, he would have run away in the spaceship a long time ago. After all, Ronan the Accuser has too much reputation for them. Go and see. Facing Joaquin's invitation, Carol tilted his head. Let's go. Joaquin had a portable oxygen mask device on his chest, and brought Carol to the edge of the atmosphere. Looking at the 4 huge warships, his eyes were full of greed. If only I could have one too. Don't even think about it, there aren't many Kree civilizations. Carol choked him angrily, looked at the rapidly approaching missile, and was about to go up but was stopped by Joaquin. Let me try first. As he spoke, he raised his right arm, opened his 5 fingers, and began to infiltrate the flying missiles, looking for the controllable substances inside. As his face began to turn red, those flying missiles slowly turned in the air and flew back towards the way they came from. Fly me there, I'm not able to control it too far. Joaquin put his left hand on Carol's shoulder, allowing her to fly him towards the carry warships. Under his control, dozens of missiles flew towards the 2 closest warships in 2 waves. This is impossible. Ronan in the command room turned pale with fright. How can such a backward planetary civilization crack our missile flight program? His adjutant called up the footage taken by the battleship. Sir, maybe you should see the 2 of them. Joaquin's face turned red in the screen, and the energy value emitted by Carol next to him was doubling and rising. Ronan glared at the adjutant. What are you waiting for? Let the fighter plane go to intercept it. Yes. As the adjutant connected points on the virtual screen, densely packed space fighter jets ejected from the battleship, firing laser cannons at the incoming missiles. Bew bew bew, bew bew bew. Boom, boom, boom. With fewer and fewer controllable missiles, Joaquin couldn't hold back his face, so he simply moved to the center of the missile explosion, absorbed the energy of these missile explosions as much as he could, gritted his teeth and compressed, absorbed. After a long time, all these energies were absorbed into his body. Looking at the battleships in the void, a teleportation came to the outside of the cab of a battleship, and looked at the bewildered carries inside through the glass. His index finger, which contained huge energy, touched the glass of the battleship. What is sound in the vacuum of the universe? Ronan the Accuser, his adjutant, Carol, who was entangled with the fighter plane, Talos and others who were hiding in the atmosphere, watched Joaquin, and a huge Kree battleship exploded with one finger, and all of them were so shocked that their eyeballs almost fell out. Sir, looking at the terrified adjutant in horror, Ronan nodded. Go back to the jumping point, the energy cube will return to our hands sooner or later. Sooner or later. Those fighter planes that were too late to withdraw flew to the depths of the universe after whistling. As long as they escaped from these 2 monsters, they would always have a way to return to their home planet. Carol came to Joaquin, looked at Joaquin with a smile on his face, and said with disbelief, how did you do it? Is it difficult? Joaquin left these 3 words of pretending to be X, and controlled the 4 Kree fighters that were too late to escape, and returned to the hidden spaceship landing pad. He glanced at the Skrull refugees who were more fearful than respectful, and came to Emma. Now go and modify the memory of Nick and Maria, so that Carol blows up the space battleship, and let them sleep well until we leave. Emma nodded and came to the cab. At this time, Nick was editing a text message. Nick Fury, who was sliding his fingers on the buttons, slowly stopped. Maria, who was on the side, also rolled her eyes and fell into a coma. Wow, it's so beautiful. A group of ground turtles lay on the glass, looking at the colorful nebula flying past in front of them, and exclaimed in a series. Talos and Carol stood behind them, looking at each other and spreading their hands. No matter how long you look at it, you won't feel tired. This is Musia's most direct emotion. She seems to have returned to her previous optimistic attitude, holding Konosova's little hand, and pointing to a star far away. Sister, look, it's so big. It's bigger than the planets we saw along the way. Haha, of course a stellar planet is big. Carol came to these black widows with arms folded, and glanced at their faces one by one. At this time, they were completely different from the indifference when they killed the enemy. They looked at the leader Konosova. Carol Danvers, would you mind telling me your names? Just call me Konosova, Isa, Oliva, Jelena, Irena, Musia. After remembering their names, Carol organized the language. Are you born with these superpowers? It feels like you and the previous me are not a group. No, we are essentially a group. We were originally ordinary people. Konosova shrugged, pointed to Carol and then nodded to herself. It's just that fate has favored us and given us abilities that ordinary people can't match. Okay, Carol thought for a while. Would you mind sharing your experience with me? The Black Widows were silent. They looked behind Carol. Dasha, who had returned to her original appearance, came to Carol with a smile. Although the tone was very polite, there was more or less blame in her words. Do you Yankees like to pry into other people's privacy? You are. Carol looked up and down Dasha, who was wearing a nightgown, and the latter extended his right hand and shook her. Let me introduce again, my name is Dasha, a mutant from Slavic. Mutant. Now she became interested. Tell me what a mutant is. Dasha ignored her, but turned her head to Musia, Irena, Oliva and Isha. Jin and Emma are waiting in the bedroom. I'm inconvenient these days. The four of them laughed lightly when they heard this, and Musia put her little hand into her nightgown and kissed her lavender lips before leaving the place with the other three, while Konosova and Tarina sat on the steps with their backs against the glass, snuggled up and stopped talking. Dasha nodded her heart, and then pointed to the two of them. I am a natural mutant, and they are all sisters who voluntarily join our ethnic group. We are one. The origin of mutants must be traced forward. Following Dasha's narration, Carol listened carefully, clenched his fists from time to time because of what happened to them, and finally turned into a sigh. So this is a mutant. Their life experience is much worse than mine. Dasha pointed to the silent Konosova and Tarina. For various reasons, they were forced to be brought to a secret organization base. They endured unimaginable torture and training since they were young, but later they almost lost their lives because of the assessment. If they were not rescued by us, they are no different from those standing on the street now. Their abilities, they were transformed the day after tomorrow. We collected the genes of the most powerful mutants on Earth, and they voluntarily accepted us to transform them, and they became the current Sun Warriors. Carol muttered to himself, Sunfighter. Dasha nodded. Yes, not only we can create super soldiers, but many other organizations can also create super soldiers. It's just that the strength of individual soldiers varies. Your military is the best among them. After all, if you want to keep that ridiculous title of Overlord, it is no longer realistic to rely on guns. Then what is your purpose in coming to the universe? Dasha thought for a while. Maybe it's boring. There are not many opponents on Earth now. They are either too weak or we can't beat them. We can only try our luck in the universe and see if we can break through ourselves. Carol became interested when he heard it. How about we form a team? Just like the Howling Commandos before, we punish evil and promote good in the universe. We don't have the energy to help aliens who have never met. Having said that, Dasha scratched her chin. By the way, what does the currency in the universe look like? Hard to say. Carol shrugged. The universe is too big. Every powerful civilization has its own exclusive currency. The most unified one is the universe currency. This currency has no entity, it is a pure virtual currency, but its purchasing power is very strong. How do I apply for an account? A series of questions did not make Carol feel impatient. She was happy to tell Dasha the general information of these cosmic civilizations, which would give her a slight sense of accomplishment as a senior. They sailed in the universe, and they soon felt bored. After all, the unchanging scenery will eventually get boring after seeing too much, but sometimes the boring voyage will suddenly add some flavoring. For example, they are now surrounded by a group of interstellar bandits. This kind of lonely big fat sheep is hard to come by. Joaquin, who is fully equipped, looks at the row of scorching sun fighters standing in front of him. Don't worry about those fighters. Their artillery fire can't break the energy shield of the spaceship. Musia, Irena and Yisha are in groups of 3, and the other 2 groups are going to kill the pilots in those spaceships. These spaceships will be our first batch of startup funds. Yes, in addition, Carol was 15 people, and the 4 of them acted alone. One person was in charge of a small battleship. As the hatch opened, they opened the portable protective cover one by one. The blue flames of the propellers equipped on the boots flickered. Ha ha ha, I caught a big fat sheep this time. After refitting this spaceship, it will become the flagship of our piranha pirate group. Boss is wise. Ow, ow. Surrounded by the goblin-like alien man in the middle, aliens with strange shapes, naked and strong chest, a pair of lavender eyeballs, staring at the Kree spaceship with the protective cover opened, the possession in the depths of the eyes almost overflowed. Gentlemen, good evening. Joaquin glanced around at the pirates in the cab, and raised his hand in front of his nose with some disgust. How long has it been since you guys took a shower? Is it so stinky? Who are you? Joaquin rolled his eyes, ignored the mentally handicapped alien, and looked at the strong men who were surrounded. I declare that from this moment on, this battleship and your heads are all my private property. Who is for and who is against? Kill him. The brawny man pulled out the curved bone blade from his back and waved it at Joaquin. The group of younger brothers around him rushed up screaming, but fell to the ground at a faster speed, one by one lying on the ground in a large font. Their limbs were all pierced and fixed by the broken iron grids. As for the leader, he blinked his lavender eyes, put down his bone blade and raised his hands with great interest. This ship is yours now. Recall all those fighter planes, everyone gather on this battleship. Regarding Joaquin's order, the strong man sat in the driver's seat without the slightest hesitation, and yelled into the communicator, Lugu Nana, quack quack chirp, doo doo woolulu. PFF'd. The brawny man who had just finished sending the message found a large pool of unknown objects on the console in front of him. He waved it casually, and the chair under the brawny's buttocks flew in front of Joaquin. Joaquin took out a small transparent glass card from his pocket, tapped on the card, then swiped the card over the brawny man's corpse, and quickly took out an identical card from his chest pocket. Holding the greasy glass card, he pressed it on his finger. Dee. Then he transferred all the universe coins in the strong man's account to his own card. It seems that this boss is very incompetent, only a little more than 22, poor ghost. Ignoring the howls of the bandits, he connected to Talos with the small communicator he carried. Does this spaceship have autopilot? How should it operate? Talos on the other side is also not sure about the spaceship operating system of these space pirates. I need to board the battleship to confirm this. No need. Joaquin hung up the communication with him and contacted Emma. Find out the aliens who can drive warships, and control them to drive warships to follow us. Okay. Emma retracted the communicator, and the huge psychic ability spread out. Soon the 2 controlled aliens boarded a small fighter, boarded the original flagship of the pirates, and began to operate the warship after they came to the cab. When Talos' spaceship set sail again, 7 or 8 warships of different sizes followed suit and acted as frigates, which made other small bandit groups tactfully avoid them. 5 days later, they arrived at the destination of the trip, the planet of civilization No. 17, Turo. This is the largest trading planet among the more than 50 surrounding galaxies. Here you can buy the most advanced spaceships and even battleships in the universe. Hey Talos, it's such a joy to see you alive. A Skrull hugged Talos happily, and patted him on the back vigorously. Have you found the lost tribe? Of course. Talos brought his wife and daughter by his side, and after introducing them to his fellow clansmen, he pointed to Joaquin and Carol. It is thanks to the help of these friends that we were able to find and rescue the clansmen this time. The screws stretched out their right hand to Joaquin. Luke. Joaquin. Just when Carol was about to shake hands with him, Luke frowned slightly. I know you. The tribe who escaped not long ago told me about you. You are a Kree. No, Luke. After Talos narrated what happened to Carol, Luke stretched out his right hand to Carol in embarrassment. Sorry. It's okay. I understand. After greeting a group of people, Luke took them out of the port and boarded a suspension car with a strong sci-fi atmosphere. Are you going to rest at our base first, or? Talos glanced at Joaquin. Let's go to the destroyer building first. This time we caught some pirates and see if there is any reward from them. It's just a matter of exchanging some money. Okay. The position of the destroyer in the universe is similar to that of the mercenaries on the Earth. They recognize money but not people. Maybe they drink and fight together in a tavern today. The next time they perform a mission, they will become enemies of life and death. This kind of thing is too common in the universe. Soon the suspension car stopped in front of a building, and a group of people got off the car and looked at the building with an exaggerated area in front of them. It was also the first time for Carol to come here, and he looked at Luke who had parked the car. Are there many experts here? Luke froze for a moment, then spread his hands. I think so. At least Turo has not encountered a local war for almost 600 years. Can you imagine? This commercially developed planet has no dedicated troops. The only military department is the Tax Inspection Bureau that specializes in taxation and order. Aren't you afraid of being occupied by other civilizations? Dasha looked curiously at the vandals passing by, and sometimes sighed at the shapes of these alien creatures. Luke led the way and whispered, "Don't stare at these vandals all the time. If you encounter someone with a bad temper, be careful to be taught a lesson. As for the problem you mentioned, it's not a big deal at all. There are tens of thousands of various saboteur legions in the entire planet Turo. The large ones have more than 100,000 people, and the small ones have hundreds of people. If there are really outsiders invading, these saboteurs are the first to refuse. After all, they don't want to be controlled by others." Joaquin nodded knowingly. It's really a good idea to raise an army of tens of millions without spending a penny. Arrive. Luke brought Joaquin and others to a counter and helped Joaquin match the rewards offered by those pirates. Among the nearly 2,000 pirates, there were only 5 rewards, and the one with the largest amount was the strong man who was dealt with by Joaquin. The reward amount was 50. The 5 quotas add up to only 90, and after deducting 1/10 of the handling fee, you get 81. Adding in the currency stolen from those pirate accounts, Joaquin now has a total of just over 200 million. After exiting the destroyer building, Joaquin turned his head and looked at Talos. When those warships are sold, let's divide the money. Since there is your base here, I think it's time for us to say goodbye. Talos looked at the smiling Joaquin, and felt a little bit reluctant. With such a high-quality thug, where would he find another one in the future? After thinking about it, then I am willing to bring a group of people to hang out with you and fight for you in the universe. Hee. Joaquin shook his head. You and your wife and daughter have just been reunited not long ago. Instead of following me with your head on your trouser belt, you might as well accompany your wife and daughter. In fact, you have worked so hard to find a new home. You might as well settle down on Star Turo. The war here will not affect you. When your group grows to a certain size, go find your home. After finishing speaking, he patted Talos on the shoulder. Forget it, you are still a small patriarch anyway. Among your clansmen, pick a group of warriors who can fly battleships and follow me. When night fell, the planet still had no intention of resting. The endless spaceships returned to and departed from the port as usual. Joaquin stood in front of the glass window of the lounge and looked at the various types of spaceships in the distance. He felt a lot of emotion for a while. What are you thinking about? Emma came barefoot behind Joaquin, put her arms around his thick waist, and buried her face on his broad back. Are you confused now? Joaquin was stunned for a moment, and then took a long breath. That's right. I just wanted to walk around in the universe and see other cosmic civilizations, but when I came to the outer galaxy, I found it was meaningless. In the highly developed universe, there are spaceships and warships everywhere. In the boundless universe, the wreckage of warships can be seen everywhere. I was thinking about what I should do next. Didn't you come out to find an opportunity for a breakthrough? How could you have these messy thoughts? After systematic psychological teaching, Emma seemed a little hard to understand what Joaquin was thinking now. It only took half a month to go from high-spirited to bewildered. With our current strength, it is easier said than done to break through. Joaquin sighed. Right now, we are better than the top and the bottom. There are probably not many opponents at the same level as us, but the universe is so big, where can we find these hidden opponents? Have you entered the corner of your mind? Dasha, who was leaning on the bed, held a wine glass in her hand and sipped the alien drink she just bought. Why do we have to find it by ourselves? She raised her head and drank the wine in the glass, got up and came to Joaquin's side, looking at the spaceships outside the window. We have the ability to snatch everything from others, then we will create our own cosmic forces and let our subordinates fight for us. After all, there will be some hidden opponents who will not be satisfied with our conquest, and will naturally come to our door. Holding Joaquin's right arm, his tail moved around Emma flexibly. As you said, the universe is too big. So far, no one or civilization can explore the entire universe. In those unknown corners, there will always be some weird things that can improve our abilities. When did you get so smart? Joaquin pinched Dasha's little cheek, and made an expression of disbelief. My God, is this the same little girl with a snotty nose, older brothers and older sisters who followed us? Go to hell you. Dasha pinched his arm, turned around and hugged the smiling Emma. Emma is mine tonight. You go to Musha and the others. Wow, I remember you as a big guy. We had a fight back then, but I didn't expect you to be alive. Carol happily hugged a tall Skrull man. The latter smiled honestly and patted Carol on the back lightly. Thank you for saving my people. It was my fault first. Carol punched him in the chest, then looked at Joaquin and his party. If you need my help, please contact me anytime. Carol made a phone call gesture, waved with Emma and the others, and rushed into the air with a yo-hoo, and flew into the depths of the universe. As a heroine with a sense of justice, she will do her best to protect those vulnerable groups in the universe. She believes that one day, the name of Carol Danvers will resound throughout the universe. Is this the warrior you found for me? Talos. Joaquin looked at the dozens of tall Skrulls behind Talos. Talos nodded and pulled the tall people beside him. This is my brother Tatar. He is the most powerful fighter in our group on Turo. He is very young and only 30 years old this year. Let him follow you. Only 30 years old. Dasha looked at the tall Tatar in front of him. How long is the average lifespan of your Skrulls? Talos thought for a while. It's hard to say. Some people who are unlucky may die before they are born. Some people who are lucky can live for more than 200 years. In our group, the longest-lived elders have lived for more than 300 years. In other words, the current Tatar is only equivalent to the age of 14.5 years of human beings. Joaquin patted Tatar's thick arm. Follow me and do it well. Hey, just this simple and honest laughter has won the favor of Emma and Dasha. Who doesn't like the loyalty and obedience of their subordinates? I helped you contact a warship dealer. Her reputation and price are relatively good among her peers. Luke shook the communicator in his hand, and Joaquin nodded. How's her energy? I mean, how about the warships he sells? You know, we need to develop rapidly, and this is inseparable from top-level warships. Ah, Luke smiled awkwardly. The other party is a businessman who has just started for a few years. If you confirm a cooperative relationship with her, I think you will develop quickly. You snatch the spaceships of those pirates and saboteurs and sell them to her in exchange for funds. She can quickly open up the market with a lower price, so as to help you get more advanced warships. Your friend, looking at the smiling Emma, Luke nodded honestly. Yes, help our group of refugees to settle in Turo. We Skrulls attach great importance to gratitude, so. Okay, you can tell her to come here as soon as possible. You know, every hour the warship parks here, it will charge a lot of parking fees. Luke dialed the other party's communicator. Hayes, this is a big customer, can you come here quickly? Bring your highest sincerity. When the other party comes, Talos will bring him to the spaceship command room. Okay. After Joaquin and his party got on the spaceship, Luke let out a long breath. To be honest, brother, it's really hard to stay with these human beings. Talos sympathized deeply, and patted him on the shoulder. That blonde human woman can know your deepest thoughts, so you'd better not lie to them, not even once. Really, real. The two stood silently with the clansmen on the port. These young Skrull warriors, listening to Talos narrating the horror of Joaquin, especially after hearing that Joaquin could absorb the energy of the Kree warship missile explosion, and one finger exploded the most advanced Kree warship, all of them were very excited. The simple and honest Tatar yelled loudly. Then let the boss take us to kill the Carrie Mother planet, we will kill those nasty Kree people and save more people. Correct. Tatar is right. Yes. Talos sighed and waved his hands, stopping the clamor of the young people. The Kree are too powerful. They have already conquered several galaxies. Even if we destroy the home planet of the Kree, have you thought about how their legions in other galaxies will retaliate against us? Looking at the young and energetic faces in front of him, Talos smiled. Follow him well in the future, be loyal to him and don't be afraid of sacrifice. This will make him full of goodwill for us, and he will really help us when we Skrulls encounter a catastrophe. Remember no matter what, you can't betray him. From now on, you are Jin's warriors and the new Skrull tribe. In the future, when you encounter wandering clansmen in the universe, all of them will be absorbed into your clan. Tatar is your patriarch. The young Skrull warriors looked at Talos and Luke with strong reluctance, but for the future of the group, their eyes quickly became firm. We will. Emma, who was standing in front of the glass window, took a sip from the wine glass and smiled. What a smart leader. Dasha beside her smiled knowingly. This is the sorrow of the weak. Only when we become stronger can we avoid this kind of thing from happening to us. This kind of thing can never happen to us, because in a certain theory, we are already part of eternal life. As long as there is life in the universe, we are immortal. Joaquin put his arms around their waists and looked at the group of Skrulls on the pier. These people will serve as communication soldiers and fighter plane operators in the future. By the way, they will help us collect the genes of intelligent races in the universe. I really want to see if we can use the genes of other creatures besides the Creator to create our own legion, a powerful army without thinking. Emmy took a sip of wine. To satisfy your ambition, we need our own territory. Dasha on the other side sneered. Aren't we allowed to choose the endless planets in this starry sky? The scorching sun warriors standing behind them, listening to their conversation, the corners of their mouths also curled up. Maybe they and others will soon have their own legion and be able to go out to fight the universe alone. This is infinitely better than staying in that small place on the Earth. Hello, Your Excellency the Mighty Destroyer, my name is Hayes, and I am a warship sales and recycling businessman. Looking at the tentacles stretched out by the other party, Joaquin still shook the other party out of courtesy. The greasy suction cups of different sizes made Joaquin, who has a sensitive sense of touch, get goosebumps all over his body. The name Hayes sounds like a female name, and it is indeed so, but it is difficult to tell that the other party is a female from the appearance, or simply put, it is difficult to tell that the other party is a female. This Nema is completely a large octopus, with more than a dozen eyes of different sizes and 2 nostrils growing on its head. Its mouth is hidden in a pile of small tentacles, and its lower body is supported by more than 10 tentacles for walking. Not only she, but also the inspectors she brought have the same shape. Jin, the batch of warships you sold are quite complete. We only need to clean up the inside a little bit before we can sell them, which saves the cost of renovation and maintenance. Hayes thought for a while. Let's do this. I'll pay $3,300 million for the second-tier flagship, and $480 million for the remaining first-tier battleships. You must know that these first-tier warships are all antiques. If it weren't for their good appearance and performance, they would all be treated as scrap iron in theory. Seeing Emma nodded, Joaquin asked again, where are those fighter planes? Huh, you also sell fighter planes? Hayes was a little puzzled. Those fighters are still relatively popular in the universe. They are not advanced, but they are cost-effective. They are especially suitable for a newly established destroyer army like you. We don't need so many. Joaquin really doesn't need so many fighters right now. The Carrie spacecraft has 24 fighter jets at the entrance and exit, each of which can dock 4 fighter jets, and there is also a fighter maintenance slot reserved. It is enough to replenish these fighter jets. 39. Make a deal. One of Hayes' subordinates took out a small machine from the box he brought, connected his account with Joaquin, and soon nearly 1.6 million universe coins were still in the account. Joaquin looked at the string of counts above, and looked at Hayes with a smile. Can you get the unmanned fighter plane of the Supreme Stars? There is also a matching control system. Sorry, you know, I'm just a small businessman. The arrogance and sincerity of the Supreme People make the saboteurs unwilling to deal with them. Joaquin thought for a while, and had no choice but to settle for the next best thing. Where's Cheta Star's fighter plane? That's even more impossible. Each of their fighter planes has an independent system code. At critical times, these codes will be connected together to form a complete defense network. No one has stolen this technology from Kadar. Then do you have any good recommendations? Emma smiled and looked at Hayes' big eye, which was dominated by vision, and the latter's two shorter tentacles spread out. Of course, there is a fighter plane just bought from MZ-113 Civilization, the big businessman Barbona of planet Turo. Why? Joaquin became interested. It stands to reason that the unmanned model is more advanced. It can hold more energy capsules and even protective covers. You have to know that that kind of fighter needs to be equipped with a special controller, and the installation of the control system also requires upgrading and refitting the battleship. This is a huge amount of money, and the value of the fighter itself is almost double that of a manned fighter. And what the saboteurs need most is manpower. In fact, many refugees or fugitives from other civilizations, as long as they have a place to stay, they can work for you with a reward of 1,000 or 2,000 every time the mission is over. Which saboteur leader would choose an unmanned fighter jet? Quote. Listening to Hayes' narration, Joaquin just smiled and nodded politely. He naturally had his own calculations in his mind. The carry spaceship he was in now could be converted into a tier warship, but the cost would be too high and it would not be cost-effective. When the funds are sufficient, he will expand his troops, and those scorching sun warriors will also be delegated. At that time, he will take Emma and Dasha to perform high-end tasks, and leave all the hard work of burning, killing, and looting to the scorching sun warriors. Thinking of this, he reported a number. I need 72 small unmanned fighters, 20 large manned fighters, and 4 customized transport fighters. In addition to the internal transformation of the spacecraft, how much money and how long will it take to complete them? Hayes' tentacles took over the virtual computer handed over by his subordinates. After checking the model of the spaceship, more than a dozen eyes widened. However, when they touched the smiling eyes of Joaquin and the others, they immediately continued to calculate. It took a long time to magnify the calculation time and various expenses. I can accept 2,781 million, but I can't accept the 3 months, it's too long. Joaquin shook his head and stretched out 3 fingers. I will give you 3,000 million, but I must complete the work within 1 month. Impossible, Chief Jin. The time I calculated for you is already 2 shifts 24 hours a day. No matter how much money you give, it's useless. Emma grabbed Joaquin's right hand that was about to be raised, and looked at Hayes with a smile. 3 months is 3 months, but we need an old spaceship that is about to be eliminated. As long as it can perform space transfer, the cheaper the better. Hayes waved his tentacles. I'll just go to the scrapyard and help you pick one of these spaceships. It's just a gift from me. Do you need any other services? Of course. Emma nodded. We need a group of top scientific researchers and medical slaves, as well as matching research equipment. These researchers need to focus on biology, and we also need some subordinates for the daily maintenance of warships and fighters. Dasha suddenly licked her lower lip. We still need a batch of long-lived female slaves. The more beautiful the better. The price doesn't matter, but we must ensure their purity and health. Hayes was shocked by Dasha's request. You are a female, even if you want to serve a slave, you have to be a male, right? Are you saying it can be done? Of course, as long as the money is in place, you can buy whatever you need on Turo Star. Joaquin waved his hand. We will set off in 2 days, with around personnel. We need supporting survival supplies. You need to prepare a lot of funds in the next 3 months, because after 3 months, we will bring a large number of warships. It depends on whether you can eat them. Okay. After Hayes left, the 3 of Joaquin sat in the command room boredly for a while, thought for a while and waved to Maloof. You have been holding back for a while. I will give you 2 days off. You can do whatever you want during the period. Just remember one thing for me, take safety measures. I don't want to meet any alien mutants in the future. Hey, thank you, boss. Maloof and the others grinned, and walked out of the command room with their shoulders crossed. Guest, where did you get this metal? An alien who looked like a hedgehog looked excitedly at a large lump of white alloy on the counter. Joaquin frowned. I asked you if you could make it into a nano suit. Why are you talking so much nonsense? Joaquin tilted his head and used the laser sight, and directly cut a pair of alloy armor next to him in half, which made the other party nod repeatedly in fright. Yes, do you have any requirements for the battle suit? Built-in oxygen converter and interstellar communication. Energy can be absorbed and converted freely. no need for built-in emergency equipment. There is this space for me to convert into energy pulses, energy swords and axes, energy shields, etc. As long as you can use advanced equipment, let me use it. You can usually wear it on your wrist as a watch. The stronger the protection ability, the better. The modder nodded. These are trivial things. According to your requirements, this suit was finally produced, with a thickness of about 5 millimeters. The reason for making it so thick is to have ample repair balance. The piece you gave can almost make 2 sets. Joaquin nodded. Dasha, go and get the remaining Zhenjin. Shoo. Looking at the faint red smoke in the air and the disappearing Dasha, the mechanic rubbed his eyes. Magic. How much is a set? The reformer wanted to open his mouth, but looking at Joaquin's eyes that were getting redder, he still said a figure of, saving capital, 727 million sets, because in order to meet your requirements, I need to nano-size this alloy first, which is the most costly. How long it takes? It only takes 1 day. This is why your alloy is relatively rare. Joaquin was a little surprised. So fast. The reformer stretched out his paw and touched his slender nose. Of course, after all, I rely on this technology to make a living. Shoo. Dasha carried the box she had brought from the earth and put it on the counter and opened it. There were still 3 pieces of alloy in it, which almost blinded the eyes of the reformer. Joaquin stared at the small mung bean eyes of the reformer with a smile. With a light hook of his finger, the reformer held his chest and took a breath. If I find out that you hide my things privately, or that there is any system that should not be installed in my custom-made battle suit, I will dismantle all the machine parts for you. As Hua Jin moved his fingers, the reformer howled in pain. Don't dare. We will pick up the goods at this time tomorrow. These alloys can be made into 10 sets. Don't think I don't know your little thoughts. I am very sensitive to metals. I will dismantle a piece of your parts if there is 1 gram missing. Maybe you can also try to escape. After Joaquin finished speaking, he took Emma and Dasha and walked out the door. When he reached the door, he did not forget to shake his hand. Another set of armor molds placed by the remodeler in the center of the store was directly crushed into a ball of iron. This warning was enough for the refitter to weigh. Walking around on the bustling street, Joaquin walked aimlessly with the 2 of them in his arms. This little thing is good enough. It actually installs chips and machinery in the brain. What is the difference between this and a robot? Emma shook her head. Who knows? Maybe it was a serious injury, maybe it was for longevity, who can say for sure? The 3 of them walked around to satisfy their curious expectations. All kinds of aliens, all kinds of food and drinks also made a lot of jokes. They obviously look like apples, but they are bitter and astringent when eaten, but some aliens eat them very happily. Early the next morning, the 3 of them took a taxi to the destroyer building and began to collect some pirate rewards. All they collected were pirate regiments with active areas, and the most powerful of them was the pirate regiment with a tier warship, which was equivalent in size to a tier destroyer legion. The division of scattered forces in the universe is very clear. A fully equipped first-level battleship can be counted as a first-level destroyer army. This type of army is the most. Their main way of survival is to explore planets that are not included in the universe, or to try their luck on some low-level civilization planets to see if they can capture a group of natives or plunder some goods. A second-level destroyer army must have 1 or more second-level warships, as well as different first-level warships. This type of army already has the ability to receive rewards. They mainly attack those first-level or weaker second-level pirate groups. More often than not, they prefer to be pirates. The same is true for the 3rd and 4th levels, but the 5th level is a threshold, because the 5th level often needs to have its own independent planet. At this stage, they are often more willing to be rich and noble. They have worked hard for most of their lives. It is time to take care of their children and consider their offspring. Whenever a prestigious 5th level force disappears in the universe, it represents the birth of a new civilization. It is possible that this civilization will prosper and form a new hegemony-level civilization, or it may be annexed by other forces to divide up assets. This is very common in the universe where the weak are prey to the strong. And Joaquin's ambition is to expand endlessly, so that all civilizations in the universe know that he is Joaquin, the conqueror of the universe. Of course, if this ambition is to be realized, it is undoubtedly similar to a dream, because there are many cosmic-level powerhouses he knows, not to mention the unknown number of gods, the first sky that created the gods, and the other 4 gods at the same level as him. It is uncertain whether there are stronger ones above them. Just a part of the torso of the first firmament forms the present boundless universe. From this we can see how desperate it is to face that first firmament. These unnecessary troubles just flashed through Joaquin's mind. When he came to the remodeler's shop to trade again, to be honest, he was amazed. As Emma collected fingerprints and jean chains, her wrists, the stiletto heels on her feet, and the nano device hanging around her neck as a pendant quickly moved around her body, and finally formed a very slim matte black battle suit, which brought out her hot figure. Drip. Following the electronic sound, 2 long and narrow lights lit up on the eyes of Emma's helmet. She raised her hands and looked at them. She squeezed her fists and felt the cold and soft touch from her palms and fingers. Gold, Dasha. She called out their names. Joaquin and Dasha used laser vision at the same time, but Dasha's was only at the gamma level, far inferior to Joaquin's. Even so, the rays of the 2 of them maximized the energy storage of the suit in just 6 seconds. I'll try my power. As she said that, she raised her right hand and pointed her palm at Joaquin, who was 1 meter away. In the blink of an eye, the part of the battle suit in her palm became a cannon muzzle about 10 centimeters long and 3 centimeters wide. The rich purple-red energy condensed at the muzzle. Wang, wang, wang. No, please don't try it here. With such a strong energy, we will all be finished. Emma remained indifferent to the reformer's begging, and waited for the energy to condense to the maximum. Ohm. The energy ball hit Joaquin's chest. When the reformer closed his eyes and was waiting to die, the pain he imagined did not come. When he opened his eyes, he saw dozens of Joaquin's phantoms, and the energy between his hands was getting smaller and smaller until it disappeared. This. Joaquin pointed his index finger at the counter, and the glass, which was strong enough to withstand hundreds of energy pulse attacks, was shattered into pieces. Can this suit resist the energy she condensed just now? Can. The reformer nodded with certainty. However, some nanoalloys will be lost. When the number of these nanoalloys is reduced to a dangerous value, this suit needs to be supplemented with new nanoalloys. Otherwise, these nanoalloys will shrink the defense range and give priority to the torso and head. Can you still upgrade? These nanoalloys need to be returned to the furnace for reconstruction, and there will definitely be losses in the process. Joaquin nodded and took out his account card. Check out. Hey. The reformer took out his account card with a smile on his face, and quickly connected with Joaquin. If you are not satisfied with the shape of the device, you can set the style and color by yourself after starting it. I think it's pretty good. Joaquin took the box containing the nano-suit device, and asked casually, have you heard of symbiosis? The reformer shook his head, and Joaquin thought for a while. If there is a creature that is liquid and can change its shape at will, can this creature be strengthened with alloy nano-strengthening? The reformer shook his head. I have done experiments on some similar liquid creatures before, but they all ended in failure. Maybe the symbiote you mentioned can only know the final effect when I see the real thing and do an experiment after testing it. That's it. Joaquin nodded. I will come to you if I need it in the future. I am very satisfied with your technology. Woo. Through the hidden monitoring at the door, after confirming that they were far away, the reformer immediately closed the store door and came to the laboratory where he worked. There was a transparent container in the corner of the test bench, and there was some viscous black liquid in it. Haha, now I can study the components of this alloy. Is it? Joaquin suddenly appeared behind him, and patted the shrewd reformer on the shoulder. I told you that I am very sensitive to metals. So many nanoalloys that you have intercepted are enough for me to dismantle your bones and reassemble them several times, right? Joaquin hooked his index finger, and those viscous nano-vibrating gold flew to his finger and circled around. The reformer was about to cry. All the devices on his body were now in a paralyzed state, and he couldn't resist even if he wanted to. He could only ask for mercy. I'll give you back your processing fee, okay? Not enough. He gritted his teeth. I paid 2,000 million for my life, and there is only so much in my account. It's not an example. After Wajin collected the money and left, he sat on the chair and wanted to cry, but fortunately his life was saved, so he could only curse Joaquin countless times in his heart. As for retaliation. Don't be kidding, if those nanosuits are really activated, with his existing weapons, he really can't penetrate the protection of those suits. This is why he took the risk to keep some of them. He wants to reproduce this magical metal and upgrade himself. I didn't expect to steal a chicken without losing money. I'm in a good mood today, not to mention earning 2,000 million for nothing, and the renovation fee will come back. I guess that little hedgehog hates me now, ha ha ha. Joaquin put his arms around the waists of the two, boarded a taxi suspension vehicle, and returned to the port where his spaceship was parked. Just as he got out of the car, he happened to see the 6 Konosovas, who were a little drunk, and the alien women with different skin colors and even strange alien women who were laughing with those alien girls through the translator, and kissed them on the face from time to time. This posture is more masculine than a man. The corners of Joaquin's mouth twitched, and he turned to stare at Dasha, who was licking his lips. Did you ask for it? They don't have the guts. Try something new, what's the big deal? Dasha patted him on the chest, then quickly stepped forward and hugged an alien woman with pointed ears. She naturally blended into it, and a group of people entered the spaceship happily. Emma carried the suitcase and Joaquin's left arm in a funny way. Let's go. In fact, you are also very itchy, aren't you? Don't you think it's weird? Joaquin and Emma walked towards the spaceship slowly. Dasha's orientation is natural, but other people are normal. Didn't you also feel disgusted at first? It doesn't matter if you get used to it after a long time. Emma leaned against Joaquin, and the two boarded the spaceship and went straight to the largest lounge in the spaceship. Haven't you found Bigfoot's fleet yet? Tatar, who was sitting in the driver's seat, shook his head. Not yet. According to the interstellar coordinates given by the destroyer building, they have been active in the Q771 galaxy for the past 2 months. Not long ago, they just occupied a barbaric civilization. After calculation, it is time to go back. Are there any other migration points around here? This galaxy is too barren, so the galaxy information here has not been collected completely. Joaquin rubbed his teeth, then searched for other areas where there may be transition points. Boss, we have been out for 22 days, and the energy consumption of the spaceship is more than half. In 3 days at most, we will have to find the nearest open civilization to replenish energy. Looking at the energy display meter on Tatar's finger, Joaquin patted him on the shoulder. Then hurry up, you can search for me 24 hours a day, and save energy for the transition. Isn't there an escape boat on the spaceship, and then rely on the escape boat to contact the energy merchant? I see, Tatar responded, and kept pressing on the console, and then pushed the forward lever, and the spacecraft shook slightly and entered the short-distance jump point halfway ahead. Adult. In the corridor back to the spaceship lounge, those Skrull warriors respectfully bowed their heads and beat their chests in salute. Joaquin waved his hand indifferently, and entered the only separate lounge of the spaceship. There was only one bunk bed in the small space, which was changed into a double bed under the control of Joaquin's magnetic field. Emma and Dasha were bored playing the alien single-player game. Ha ha ha, little girl, twist your waist a bit more. Get rich, haha. In the hull of a third-class warship with mixed smells, hundreds of predators of various colors surrounded dozens of ragged female slaves in a circle. They clamored and shouted, staring at the naked white skin of these female slaves. These female slaves wore collars with miniature electric shock devices around their necks. Their long white hair covered their backs and left them to their buttocks. They had a pair of pointed ears that kept shaking because of fear. Their graceful bodies were touched by the rude predators from time to time, and then they put their hands or paws in front of their noses and sniffed lightly, causing their companions to laugh wantonly. Lutos was sitting in the command room, watching the scandal in the hall with a smile through the monitor. This time, he was shocked. He never expected that such a young star and an ecological planet that was also young and had not undergone large-scale destruction were hidden in such a remote and barren galaxy. And a group of super long-lived species that are extremely rare in the universe. This race, which is said to have disappeared 800 years ago, unexpectedly left behind a group of people and migrated here. In 800 years, the population of this ethnic group has barely exceeded 3,000. Excluding the over 200 people who were accidentally killed during the arrest, the remaining 2,800 people, regardless of age, were all taken away. After seeing enough of the farce in the surveillance, he called up the detailed information on this long-lived ethnic group on the internet. Fairy Star Incensement. Mammals. Long-lived species with the longest known lifespan in 1719. The average height of this group is 1.77 centimeters. This is a perfect race. Their bodies will secrete an unknown hormone from birth, forming an indescribable fragrance. At the same time, when they are sleeping, they will involuntarily send out gentle brain waves, which can make their partners fall into a deep sleep, so that they can better restore the energy consumed during the day. This race was included for the first time 518,493 years ago. Because of its backward civilization and the outstanding appearance of the men and women of the ethnic group, they were caught and sold by higher civilizations, resulting in a sharp decrease in the number, and finally became extinct 813 years ago. Ludos had already tasted the taste of these female slaves, so he was convinced of this record. He clicked on the contact book stored in the battleship, found a head of a Cree merchant, and clicked. Soon, a fat phantom of a blue-skinned man appeared in front of him. "Ha ha, Ludos, what good is there this time? Garrido, have you ever heard of elves?" The blue-skinned fat man was stunned. "I have millions of elves in my hand. Some are ugly and some are good-looking, some are powerful and some are weak. Which one do you mean? You must know that there are more than 2,000 races in the universe, all called elves. I didn't make it clear, it's elf star fragrance." Garrido sat up straight. His huge belly became more conspicuous. He was a little excited. "Is it the one that has been extinct for hundreds of years?" "You found it. 2,871 people, including 1,000 people over 219 years old, 10 people under 377 years old. The remaining females accounted for the majority, with 1,795 people, and the remaining 426 males. I want it all." Looking at Garrido's eyes that were bloodshot with excitement, Ludos smiled and asked the question he was most concerned about: "What price can you give? You must know that the cloned products of this group have no body fragrance and auxiliary brain waves, they are irreplaceable. A reorganized fleet of 2 Tier 50 warships, 4 Tier, 8 Tier warships, and a Tier Cree warship after refitting. I can give you 100 billion universe coins in cash. With these, you can completely build a new civilization by yourself. And it has always been protected by our Cree Empire. Make a deal. Ha ha ha, then I will leave for Turo Star." The blue-skinned fat man who hung up the communication rubbed his hands with a smile. "Hee, with these slaves, our slick family can grow rapidly, and in exchange for more support, we will replace Ronan and become the upstart of the Cree civilization." On the other side, after negotiating the business, Ludos also excitedly patted the control panel. Coincidentally, the little finger of his right hand was pressed on the button to unlock the invisibility, and he was able to continue the invisible flight when he came back to his senses. It's always right to be careful." Ludos let out a long breath, and walked towards his captain's cabin, where there were still 2 incense men waiting for him. Thinking of the unforgettable taste, his pace inevitably became much faster. "Boss, it's revealed." Tatar called Joaquin with a communicator, while calculating the flickering wave icon, and quickly came up with the best sailing route, just as Joaquin arrived behind Tatar through teleportation. "What's the situation?" "Just now, our spaceship radar captured a fleeting propeller fluctuation. After calculation, it was determined that it was the thrust of a Tier warship. The other party turned on the stealth navigation mode. After all, our spaceship is too old. If the other party hadn't lifted the stealth suddenly, we might have missed them." Joaquin nodded. "Can you catch up with them?" "Yes, they are about 27 miles behind us, and the direction is Turo Star." "I see." He patted Tatar on the shoulder. "Calculate the azimuth using the nearest jump point, and we will go around in front of them." Estimated 5 minutes. Tatar kept pressing the buttons on the control console while talking, and Joaquin picked up the communicator on the spaceship. "All Sun warriors assemble, Skrull warriors put on their armor, take your weapons, and prepare to take over the new battleship." Soon, the hull of this old spaceship was full of heavily armed soldiers. Under the leadership of Emma and Dasha, the 6 Black Widows all activated the nano suits. Except for the exposed heads, everything below the neck was covered by matte black vibrating gold nano suits. They love the smug and beautiful, and they also like to derive slender high heels from the shoes to make their figures more outstanding. Our tactic is very simple. First, capture an enemy warship, no matter how big or small. use the radar in their warship to search for other warships, and then lead the Skrull fighters to capture the pilot house in batches, and the pirates will finally be dealt with. He smiled and scanned everyone's faces one by one. Those looters are more arrogant than destroyers, but this time they rushed back carefully. They must have found something valuable. Keep your eyes open, and don't let the treasure slip away from our noses. Yes, saw. Tatar in the cab raised his finger and pointed to the somewhat distorted space. That's caused by the energy emitted by the propeller. Find the biggest one and paste it. As soon as we get close, we will definitely be found. Rubbing Tatar's bare head. So what if you find it? This spaceship is originally a one-off. With the third-tier battleship opposite, you still need this old antique. Understood. Joaquin thought for a while and put his hands on his back. The matte black vibrating gold nanorobots began to cover Tatar's back, and finally covered his whole body. I shared a set of nanosuits to protect you. Remember to return it to me after this operation. It is good. Even if the spaceship is blown to pieces by the opponent, you will be safe and sound with this battle suit. We will go there first after getting close. When the third-level battleship stops advancing, it means that we have occupied the local battleship. You just abandon the ship and land. After finishing speaking, he left the cab, came to the hall and grabbed Emma and Dasha's small hands from left to right. Each Sun warrior would hold each other with one hand, and a Skrull warrior would hold the other hand. The fellow behind him would put his hand on the shoulder of the previous fellow, and so on. Leader, leader. A pirate who looked like a pig-headed man looked at the coordinates of the small spaceship that was approaching quickly outside his ship, and hurriedly pressed the beeper. An unknown spaceship is approaching the Alexander ship. Shit. Lutos, who had violently tore off the clothes of the two incense men just now, put on his clothes after cursing, and walked quickly to the cab. You son of a fool, if you can't. Before he finished talking about the red triangle icon on the monitor, it overlapped with his warship. Lutos pressed the siren without hesitation. Attention, attention, an unknown spaceship is approaching. The Black Goat fighter squad is dispatched, and give me a bombardment of that spaceship, Wardfa, K. In the monitoring monitor, there were suddenly more than 100 green-skinned aliens, more than a dozen aliens similar to Earthlings. The moment they appeared, they were divided into more than a dozen teams and disappeared again. Soon, on other monitors, unknown teams began to attack their own men. Seeing the subordinates who were quickly eliminated, he picked up the communicator to connect to the other, second-level warships and first-level warships. The flagship has been invaded by unknown forces. You fools, hurry up and help the flagship, or these incense people will be robbed, and everyone will drink the northwest wind. Soon densely packed landing ships set off from warships showing their figures and converged towards the huge flagship. After the bridge strings were docked, a brave pirate ran around roaring, searching for the unknown forces that the head said. The spaceship that Tatar was driving was smashed into cosmic garbage by the energy shells of the supporting fighter plane. Tatar, who was blown away by the explosion energy, did not feel any pain from his body, but there was an extra side of Zumi in his field of vision. Didi, number vibration gold battle suit is at your service. Can you take me to the bridge string of that third-tier warship? We are happy to help. Tatar felt the soles of his feet warm slightly, and then the surrounding scenery quickly flashed across the virtual display. The third-tier battleship was getting bigger and bigger. He spotted a landing ship that had just left, and the gate that had begun to close, gritted his teeth and flew in through the smaller and smaller cracks. Bang! Ow! The pirates who had just finished queuing looked at the large character gravure on the front wall, and then at Tatar who fell to the ground with his head up. They all showed mocking expressions, and turned the muzzle of the energy pulse gun in their hands. I surrender. As soon as Tatar got up, he was aimed at by dozens of measuring rifles. He was so frightened that he yelled immediately, but the leading crab alien on the opposite side spit bubbles, fire. Bew bew bew, bew bew bew, oh, I'm going to die, I'm going to die. Tatar, who was wearing a Zhenjin nanosuit, bowed sideways to protect his head with his hands, and his right leg was also curled up on his lower abdomen. He was in a standard beating posture. Hearing the sound of intensive energy shooting, he was ready to return to the embrace of his ancestors. But after the gunshots stopped, he didn't wait for the ancestors' call, but instead waited for Moda's emotional electronic voice. The system has determined that a fatal attack has been received. Would you like to fight back? Fight back, fight back. As Tatar's voice fell, 2 long energy devices split from the back of the nano suit. With the buzzing sound, the energy absorbed just now was transformed into an energy ray. Sweeping left and right alternately, dozens of pirates on the opposite side were cut in half, and various internal organs flowed all over the place. After those 2 devices were integrated into the Tatar battle suit again, he stepped forward to pick up a good energy gun, took out 2 energy magazines from the pile of corpses, and ran to the command room while replacing them. With this suit, he felt that he was the brightest cub in the Skrull tribe. Prepare to separate the cab. Ludos gave instructions to the driver beside him, who hesitated a bit. Captain, our brothers are still rushing to support. Shit. Ludos rolled his eyes, his right hand was covered in flames, and he slapped the pirate's head directly. After 2 howls, the corpse with a blackened skull was kicked to the ground by him. He wanted to press the release button with his right hand, but he couldn't press it. Tisk tisk tisk, I didn't expect that. Joaquin and Emma, who were wearing nanosuits, teleported behind Ludos. Emma lifted the protection on her head, revealing her beautiful face. It's actually possible to meet fellow mutants in the vast universe. Are you from Earth? Ludos, who turned around, looked at Emma's amazing face, and his original nervousness turned into surprise. Didn't expect that our Earth's technology is so advanced in just over 60 years. He implanted a shield in his brain. Emma ignored him and just turned his head to look at Joaquin. The latter took back the nanosuit and shook his right hand one by one. Okay. At this time, Ludo's brain nerves were damaged due to the destruction of the shielding device, but his ability to accept Emma was not affected. Let the pirates and other warships stop landing, turn off the engine and stand by. Ludos, with empty and dark eyes, stepped forward and picked up the communicator. The flagship's invading enemy has been eliminated, and the other warships are on standby. Recover the landing craft. After ordering 3 times in a row, he sat in the driver's seat in a daze. Joaquin waited until Emma nodded, then turned his index finger at Ludos. Blood flowed from his nostrils and ear holes, and his body twitched due to a nervous reaction. He's from Munich. He awakened his ability to control fire because the flames of war reached his house. I didn't expect him to be an alpha-level mutant. Joaquin lit a cigarette and took 2 puffs. How did he come to the universe? During the battle with Mao Shang, he was discovered by a land reclamation first-class battleship and brought into the universe. This guy is also a ruthless master. After pretending to be weak for a few years, he directly killed most of the manpower in that spaceship and became the boss himself. He has not been very good these years. The reward amount was as high as 20,220 years ago. Now what? Because of the war 2 months ago, he now has a reward of 470 million. Joaquin breathed out the smoke ring. It's low, based on his current fleet and his own strength. It is estimated that no fool will come to trouble him. Those aliens will not fight this powerful predator fleet for a reward of less than 2,000 million in total. What about him? I cut off his cranial nerves, hang him with nutrient solution first, and buy a culture room to raise him when I go back. I will find an expert in genetics and let him extract the X gene. At least he is an alpha grade. As they said, the 2 turned around and were about to get out of the cab, when they bumped into Tatar, who was coming with a gun at the door. Seeing that Tatar was wearing a vibrating nanosuit and holding a low-end energy weapon, Emma couldn't help but tilt her head and cover her mouth and laughed. Joaquin also twitched. With this battle suit, do you still need this kind of individual weapon? Said that he patted Tatar's chest with his right hand, and took back the battle suit. Tatar smiled honestly. He, I don't have enough authority. Okay, Joaquin shrugged. You will be driving this battleship from now on. Hey, good. Tatar threw away the energy gun, rubbed his hands and entered the cab, while Joaquin and Emma came to the captain's lounge. The 2 incense men wrapped Meowman's body with a sheet, and hid in the cabinet in the corner, not daring to make a sound. I didn't expect that the Shangren, who have been extinct in the universe for more than 800 years, still have a tribe of survivors. Emma walked slowly to the hiding place of the 2, and after opening the cabinet, she bent down and looked at the 2 incense men. The elegant fragrance made Emma raise her eyebrows unexpectedly. It's fragrant but not greasy, and it's also very beautiful. I think Dasha will be busy in the future. My name is Dasha, we are a newly formed team, would you like to join our team? The two elf incense men looked at the two strangers in front of them, and then looked at each other. Can you protect us from being oppressed? In fact, whether you like it or not, from now on your entire clan is my property. Joaquin stepped forward with a smile, put his head in front of them and smelled it. It is also a pleasing thing to have you take care of my daily life every day. After speaking, he patted their little heads. Come out, your people will be gathered together soon, and I will announce this fact to them. Seeing the back of Joaquin leaving, the two incense men got out of the closet and followed Emma to the main hall of the flagship. The corpses of pirates everywhere on the road made them feel happy and worried about the future fate of the whole family. In the hall that was quickly cleared, there were long snow-white and long-haired elven star fragrancers. They were indeed not ashamed of the word elf, and they were all very eye-catching. The scroll warriors surrounded them with weapons, waiting for the leader to arrive. Soon Joaquin and Emma came to the stairs above the hall, with their arms outstretched to support the handrail, looking down at the dense crowd of elf star incense people below. The cries of infants and the buzzing of these incense people whispering echoed in the space, and the rich fragrance began to spread around. My name is Joaquin. He waited for the two fragrant chicks to return to the ethnic group, and then began to introduce himself. I am the leader of the Conqueror Legion. The composition of my power is very simple. Earthlings and Skrulls, I just don't know if you want to be part of this legion. Elf star fragrancers heard about the frying pan, and they started discussing one after another. After a long time, a woman with a somewhat old face stood at the front of the crowd, followed by more than a dozen female fragrancers. If we Shang people join your legion, will you clean up the weak? Take those children in exchange for battleship weapons. What can we get if we join your legion? Joaquin floated up with a smile, and under their surprised gazes, he landed gently in front of the elderly fragrant man. I can only tell you this, after joining my legion, all of you will live in battleships when performing missions, which will protect you from being discovered by other predators, pirates and saboteurs. When my legion expands to a certain size, the planet you originally lived on will become my base, and then the elders, infants and young children in your clan can live a normal life. Isn't this what you have been looking forward to? Finally, you are intelligent creatures with your own personal emotions. If I exchange your clansmen for battleship weapons, are you still willing to fight for me? Quote. He looked at the emerald green eyes of the elderly fragrant man. You are indeed very fragrant and beautiful, but I haven't done it to the point where I need to exchange women for supplies. I discussed this with you just to respect you. In fact, whether you want to believe it or not, from the moment I took over this fleet, you are already my private property. He found some high-tech products on some incense people, and he was a little clear. Do you have your own spaceship? Yes. The older Shangren nodded, and his tone was full of sorrow. Some tribesmen voluntarily used their bodies to trade in exchange for it. But we can't afford advanced warships, and we don't have our own technology. We can only live in hiding. It wasn't until more than 800 years ago that we settled down on the current planet. Unexpectedly, when the tribesmen went out to purchase supplies, they were still followed by those predators to our planet. Maybe I can give you unimaginable power. Joaquin threw out the bait. As long as you follow me sincerely, I will select a group of brave fighters from among your people and give them power beyond your imagination. As he spoke, his right hand gripped a metal wall one by one, and a steel plate with a size of 4 or 5 square meters was torn off out of thin air by him. Under his control, the steel plate was twisted and deformed at will, and finally divided into hundreds of sharp knives by him. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Tuck, tuck, tuck. On that steel wall, densely packed with sharp daggers, he opened his mouth with a smile. Emma. Emma appeared next to Joaquin with a swish, and also stretched out her right arm and opened her palm. The wall riddled with holes, under the astonished gaze of everyone with their mouths wide open, turned into yellow sand spinning all over the sky, and then the yellow sand was turned into a complete steel wall by Emma. This is only a part of our ability, a very small part. Joaquin squeezed 2 fingers with a smile. We still have immortality, and we can also make your people immortal. Maloof. A tall figure leapt down, took off his combat uniform, revealing his outrageously strong body. Joaquin hooked his right hand, and the energy gun in Tatar's hand fell into his hand, and he looked at Malav without blinking. Bew. Ah, really shot. Isn't this person going to die? In the sight of these elven star fragrancers, Maloof's body had just been pierced by an energy bullet, and he began to heal quickly the next moment. Even a shot in the heart only allowed him to recover for 2 or 3 seconds. Ah, I almost forgot. The energy gun in Joaquin's right hand, under the control of the magnetic field, turned into a sharp long knife. Ignoring Malov's constantly rolling eyes, raised the knife and slashed down, PFF'd. Puff. Malouf's tall and strong body fell on his back, and kicked his legs in a nervous reaction. Joaquin took out a cigarette and lit a cigarette. As soon as he took a puff, Malouf sat up in shock, stood up with a long knife on his forehead, grabbed the handle of the knife with his right hand, and complained grinningly, "Boss, can you call Bo Yika next time?" His head healed quickly, and short hair grew back. After moving his neck, he disappeared beside Joaquin. The next second, he appeared behind Andre at the stairs on the second floor. The long knife in his hand pierced Andre's chest unceremoniously from his collarbone. "I make you laugh." "Ah, Malouf, Suka Buli." Seeing the two alive and kicking, the Shang people began to clamor. If they also possessed this ability of immortality, then when they faced those predators again, they would not have to worry about casualties at all, just charge forward and the job would be over. Can we really have this kind of immortality? Seeing the longing of the incense people, Joaquin nodded, "Of course. The premise is that you must be loyal to me, and the second is to prove to me your own value." "We will." Joaquin glanced at the group of incense men. "Then starting tomorrow, you will select youngest fighters from the tribe, and my subordinates will train you in fighting skills. I think you will have a chance to prove yourself soon." Emma pulled Dasha, who was licking her lips, followed Joaquin with a smile, and returned to the captain's lounge. "Hey, Luke, it's really not easy to come to you alive." An alien with a head full of spikes and no nose came to the bar in front of Luke wearily. There were 5 captains beside him, all of them with expressions of survivors after a catastrophe. Talos, who was wiping the glass next to Luke, quickly took out the drinks they ordered, and filled a large glass for these people. Luke grabbed Talos, who had finished pouring the wine. "This is Talos, my family member who is wandering outside. He will also be the boss here in the future. Zafi needs to take care of him." I said, "Why is it a little strange?" Zafi put down his wine glass, and waited for Talos to fill up the wine before he sipped it. "Recently, a group of people appeared out of nowhere. No matter whether they are saboteurs or looters, as soon as they find out, they will swarm up and leave no one alive. Thanks to my vigilance, I jumped forcibly before the other party surrounded me, and this saved my life." "Have you lost a lot of manpower?" "Okay." Zafi sighed. "This support mission is in vain. 3 first-class warships have been lost, and 1 second-class warship needs major repairs." Luke smiled. "You have 2 third-tier flagship ships, 3 second-tier battleships, and 7 first-tier battleships. Will you not be able to defeat the opponent? But this group of people has 5 third-tier warships, 14 second-tier warships, and countless first-tier warships." Zafi took the barbecue from Talos and took a bite viciously. "It seems that Turo won't be able to come in the next few years. I have to go to other trading galaxies to see." Luke and Talos laughed without saying a word, and soon after the group had eaten and drank enough, they took their room cards and went upstairs to rest. There was a robot doll in each room, which was produced by a half-life, half-mechanical civilization. "It seems that your original vision was right." Talos smiled. "Because I have seen how powerful he is, I let Tatar follow him. With his growth rate, I believe he will be able to establish his own civilization soon." "Hope so." The two looked at each other and smiled, and continued their work. On the other side, in the depths of the universe, a huge fleet was rapidly heading towards Turo Star. In a surrounded third-class battleship, Joaquin was lying on a soft chair, enjoying the services of fragrant girls. Some of these beautiful girls trimmed his nails, and some massaged his temples. The ubiquitous fragrance kept Joaquin in a state of peace of mind. "How long will it take to reach Turo?" A fragrant girl quickly replied. "It is estimated that after more than 290 jumping points, we will be able to reach the vicinity of Turo Star." "Okay." Joaquin touched the girl's head, and the latter knelt down knowingly, and put her little face there. "Hayes, long time no see." Joaquin smiled and shook Hayes' tentacles. "Can you get a 5th-tier battleship?" "You must be joking with me, Jin. The 5th-tier battleship is not something that a small businessman like me can buy." Hayes's 2 slightly shorter tentacles swayed in midair. there are 77 known civilizations in the entire universe that can independently complete the manufacture of 5th-tier warships, and each civilization is extremely powerful. A small person like me doesn't even have the chance to meet some of their mid-level ones. Where can I buy them for you? Is it? Joaquin was a little interested. Can the Kree civilization rank in the top 10? Don't be kidding, the Kree civilization can be ranked in the top 30 in the entire universe at most. Hayes swung his tentacles and followed Joaquin towards the inside of the remodeled Carey spacecraft. Your positioning of this spacecraft is a survival battleship, so I changed all the space outside the apron into a suitable environment for living, and even the outer shell has been changed. With the original protection and invisibility performance unchanged, 8 more large water storage tanks and energy converters have been added to better provide the spacecraft with endurance. Sniff, sniff. After saying this, she sniffed her nostrils. Jin, you have a special fragrance on you. The left side of the spacecraft is the rest room. There are 8 rooms on the first floor for 12 people. There are 8 rooms on the upper and lower floors. In addition, there are 2 double rooms on each floor and 1 single room. Each floor is equipped with 2 weapon storage rooms. Individual equipment is fully equipped according to the person team per room. According to your requirements, an ecological leisure area has been transformed on the right, with a micro-adjustable mimetic star, and I also spent a lot of money to plant a batch of those fruit trees you mentioned. Jin, to be honest, your 3,000 million transformation fee is not enough. Joaquin came to the ecological recreation area and breathed the fresh air inside. Some strange-shaped little beasts burrowed around in this small forest. The mimic yellow dwarf device above his head radiated warm sunlight. He walked on the green lawn, and there was the rustling sound of leaves colliding in his ears, which made him feel as if he had returned to the farm on the earth. As much as you want, I will never let my partners suffer, you can rest assured. After enjoying a moment of tranquility, he looked at Hayes aside. Actually, you didn't tell me the truth, did you? Hayes. Jin, we are partners, how could I lie to you? No, no, no. Joaquin interrupted Hayes, who was about to explain. Actually, you know where you can get a 5th-level spaceship, don't you? You are afraid that I will find other businessmen in the future, so you didn't tell me the truth. I didn't lie to you. With my current strength, I really don't have the qualifications to talk to those big businessmen. They don't even look down on us small characters. Unless we have something that can impress them, maybe they will consider meeting us. Hayes squirmed his tentacles on the lawn, came to a low-lying area, and looked at his reflection in the water. Your steps are too big, my friend. Every 5th-level legion, whether it is destroyers, looters, pirates, or even those civilizations, they have been fighting around for many years, and they have accumulated enough capital to get involved in 5th-level warships. Money is not a problem. I can grab the treasure, but I must have my own 5th-tier battleship in a short time, and not one. Jin, if it wasn't for Luke's sake, I really don't want to deal with you. Hayes came to Joaquin, with more than a dozen eyes of different sizes, staring at Joaquin's ambitious eyes. You are different from the refugees who escaped from other civilizations. You are very dangerous, now you remind me of a legend recorded in the family. Who? Looking at the interested Joaquin, she opened her mouth hidden in the tentacles. Thanos. Joaquin blinked and blinked. Who is that? Destroyer. Joaquin looked strange. Are you sure? Hayes twisted his tentacles. Of course, according to the records in the clan, one of my ancestors met him after splitting from the clan and helped him complete a few big deals, so he quickly accumulated a lot of wealth and gradually gained a foothold in the group of merchants. Then your ancestor must be very powerful now. No. Hayes waved his tentacles. In fact, my ancestor was killed by Thanos' enemies after less than 5 years of glory. This is why I dare not tell you the truth. Your ambition will kill me sooner or later. Joaquin didn't know what to say for a while, so he could only put his hands in his pockets and stared at the woods in front of him in a daze. Hayes was also calculating the gains and losses in his heart, and finally came to a conclusion. That is, during the time when Joaquin started his business, doing business with him could quickly accumulate his wealth. Let's settle my gains this time first. After a long time, Joaquin brought Hayes to the brand new reception room. Emma and Dasha were sitting on the sofa playing games. She glanced at Hayes next to Joaquin. Emma frowned, put down the game console at random, got into Joaquin's arms, and whispered in his ear, "There is something on her body that blocks my spiritual power. Joaquin patted her on the back and looked at Hayes. Is there any talent I asked you to help me find? Of course. Hayes took the virtual screen from his subordinates, swiped his tentacles a few times, and pushed it in front of Joaquin. You are very lucky. A month and a half ago, I bought you a fleeing small tribe in the slave market on planet Turo. This small tribe is very interesting. Obviously, the technology has just reached the initial stage of exploring the universe, but due to internal strife, the mother planet was destroyed. Those who escaped happened to be captured by a second-level destroyer army. Joaquin became interested and looked at the alien with big head, big eyes, small arms and small legs on the virtual screen. What research direction do they focus on? Biology. Hayes rolled up the cup on the coffee table and took a sip of the viscous wine. They wanted to strengthen their bodies, but the medicine they developed did strengthen their bodies, but it also destroyed the brains of the experimental subjects, turning them into monsters that only know how to bite people. In just 1 week, almost all the creatures on their home planet were extinct. Few tribes escaped, and I bought one of them. Joaquin sneered. I don't need this type of biological research. Okay. Hayes put down his glass indifferently, took the price list calculated by his subordinates, and after some calculations, he came up with the final trading plan. It will take me a while to digest this batch of yours. After all, it takes time for a third-tier warship to find a buyer. Why don't we barter? Tell me. Hayes took the virtual screen and swiped a few times to call up a virtual map of a battleship. This battleship comes from a powerful civilization in the galaxy cluster numbered I-26. My father recovered a second-hand battleship and donated it to me as an initial fund after repairs. The propulsion performance of a top-tier Tier 120 battleship is even comparable to that of a tier warship. The main gun is a converged pulse laser, which can concentrate sub-cannons at the same time. After being arranged, they form a main gun. Theoretically, one shot with the highest power can smash the shield of a tier warship, but the energy consumption is also very large. The captain is 1283 meters long and 4,219 meters wide. The defensive and offensive weapons are the 320 aggregated pulse laser cannons. The energy shield is fully powered, which can withstand a round of salvos from 5 warships of the same level. There are 24 built-in warplane storage ports. Each landing pad can accommodate 3 of the latest MX-type spaceships. Quote, M fighters are fighters equipped by high-level saboteurs and marauders, while MX is an upgraded version of M fighters. While the cost is high, the powerful arsenal and survivability are also directly proportional to the price. How many tier warships like this do you have? Hayes narrowed more than a dozen eyes. 6. How many ships can I exchange for these seized? Do you need to modify it? Joaquin nodded. Of course. That can only be changed to 1. Hayes rolled up the bottle and poured wine for himself. Even if the 4th-tier warships are second-hand, the price is much higher than that of the 3rd-tier warships, let alone these 6 warships from a powerful civilization. They have only served for more than 20 years. If the commander of that fleet is not greedy for money, my father would not be able to get these good things. Emma, who was still playing the game, sat up straight and looked at Hayes, who was drinking with a smile. That means your father can help you get a 5th-tier warship from this civilization. It's theoretically possible. Hayes put down his glass. The commander has lived for more than 3,000 years, and there are very few treasures that can impress him. I suggest that after accumulating wealth quickly, it is better to establish your own civilization, so that you will be able to build your own warships in less than 100 years. Hayes, I want all the 6 warships. You should start modifying them now. You'd better modify the appearance as well. It will be bad if you encounter other civilized spaceships someday. Don't worry, Jin, the appearance has been changed a long time ago. Now it's just to help you change the interior layout of the spaceship. It's really strange why you waste such a large space in the spaceship to transform a mimic environment. Joaquin exchanged accounts with her, and Hayes paid the rest of the payment in one lump sum except for the tier battleship that was exchanged for goods. I'll refit one for you first, and it only takes a month. I'll send the rest of the 5 ships together after remodeling. I think you already know the price. Of course, happy cooperation. After saying goodbye to Hayes, Joaquin looked at Emma, who was sipping a drink. You and Dasha made a hard trip back to Earth and brought our own researchers here. My father took care of all those bases. You and Dasha took people to Wakanda to get more vibration gold. By the way, I brought my brother a second-tier warship. I think it's time for him to develop in the universe. A day later, the spaceship, which was full of advanced special products of the universe, left Turo and flew towards the Earth. There were more than a dozen elf star incense girls serving them, and 2 teams of Skrull warriors who acted as porters and drivers. These were the hands of Emma and Dasha. And Joaquin came to the small modification shop alone. The modifier who was introducing the weapon's performance to an alien, saw the ancestor coming, and shivered involuntarily. He left the customer and came to Joaquin. He rubbed his little paws and said flatteringly, "Customer, long time no see. You are busy first, I have something to talk to you when I am done." Soon the reformer dismissed the customer, and Joaquin waved back casually, and the remodeled iron door fell with a bang. Joaquin manipulated the magnetic field with a smile, and pulled the reformer in front of him. "Do you belong to a living thing? Or do you belong to a mechanical body?" I. The processor in the reformer's head was spinning rapidly, and he sighed lonely for a long time. "I don't know either." Oh. Joaquin was interested and put the hedgehog on the counter, and the latter sat down on the counter glass. "I was just an ordinary little hedgehog. One day when I was looking for food, I accidentally fell into a small hole covered by dead leaves. This small hole was very deep. When I fell to the ground, my bones were almost broken. What appeared in front of my eyes was a small metal ball, and I touched it with my nose curiously. Maybe the blood on my nose activated the iron lump, and the ball suddenly separated into countless iron pieces, which burrowed into my body along my wound, and I passed out because of the pain." Quote. "And then you became like this?" The little hedgehog nodded. "Well, I only realized after I woke up that this little iron ball is the final product of a generation of civilization on our planet. Because the previous generation of civilization was too belligerent, they eventually had internal disputes. The crystallization of wisdom on my body was left in that small cave during that war. That is to say, the nanosuit you modified for me is actually a product of that civilization." He. Looking at the small teeth exposed by the little hedgehog's grin, Joaquin twitched. "If I hadn't looked for you, how much money would you have made this time?" The little hedgehog buckled his paws in embarrassment. In fact, it only cost more than 5 universe coins that time, and it was also the electricity bill. After all, the alloy is too hard. If you want to melt it and transform it into a nano-robot, the transformed machine pair requires more energy. You are really a talent. Joaquin rolled his eyes, propped his right elbow on the counter, and flicked the little hedgehog's forehead with a smile. "Follow me. You can't show your talents here at all. I will soon have a planet of my own. At that time, I will need a lot of weapons. How about you being the minister of equipment for my power? I will find you the most beautiful hedgehog in the universe. If I can think and talk, I can live a long life. After all, I have already lost 2 wives. What about the child?" The little hedgehog spread his little paws. "My current body structure is quite special. I can feel it, but I can't produce a child. Pack up the things you need to take away, and I'll send someone to help you." "Unnecessary." The little thing waved his little paw, and pointed to the small watch on his right paw. "I have a subspace bracelet." Then, under Joaquin's dumbfounded gaze, he put all the objects touched by his little paws into the little bracelet. Looking at the empty little shop, he spit out 2 words for a long time. "Gululu, let's discuss it. How about helping me make a bracelet like this?" On the way back, Joaquin kept talking to the little hedgehog beside him, and the latter spread his claws helplessly. "It's really not good. This is the space that the iron ball came with back then. I really don't know how to make it." "Really? Real? Okay." Returning to the lounge of a 3rd-tier battleship that was snatched away, the little hedgehog was grunting, squinting his eyes and enjoying himself, and 2 fragrant girls were bathing him and trimming the soft fur on his paws and abdomen. The little guy is almost 1 meter tall, and his hind legs are a section longer than those of the same species, which allows him to wear small pants full of tool bags and a tattered leather jacket on his upper body, which he put away like a baby. "My first wife sewed it for me." Joaquin, who was soaking in the pool, tilted his head to look at the little hedgehog enjoying himself. "How long have you been here on Turo?" 83 years. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.